Good evening. Tonight we are playing or attempting to play Candela Obscura. We have played worse. We tried to play Burning Wheel on the channel a while back. Candela Obscura is, of course, by the good folks at Darrington Press, who you may know from Critical Role or their own Candela Obscura live play. Don't expect costumes and stuff, apart from me, because I'm weird. The players will, of course, be playing in a more usual fashion to what we normally do. So, what is Candela Obscura? It is Vason's red-headed stepbrother with too many chromosomes. Is the way you could put it. Now, I'm being too negative and prejudicing people. Right, what it is a kind of not even alternate history. It's another world, but it's a kind of gentler Call of Cthulhu in a way, you might say. It's an investigative horror game. If you're well read on old ghost stories and things to the same extent that I am, it reminds me a lot of William Hope Hodgson's work, particularly the Carnacki stories, but with a bit more emphasis on monsters and things rather than ghosts necessarily. It uses its own system, which is derived from Blades in the Dark, which in turn is derived from Powered by the Apocalypse, a system for which my hatred is well known. So I'm being incredibly fair by giving this game a go and us trying to play it. Your character, if you have one, has 3 drives: nerve, cunning, and intuition, which you could broadly interpret as physical, social, and mental spheres. Underneath each of those, you have actions, which are somewhat more broadly defined than they are in Powered by the Apocalypse. So you have under nerve, for example, you have move, strike, and control. Those have ratings. That's how many dice you roll. You roll that many dice, and then from that you determine your success. A 1 to 3 is a failure. A 4 to 5 is a success at a cost. A 6 is an outright success. If you roll more than 1 6, then you get a critical success. You can spend points out of a pool of points under each of your drives to boost when you make a roll. That gives you extra dice. You can never have more than 6 dice in your pool. Some skill abilities, some actions are gilded, and that means you change out some of the dice equal to the action level, and you roll those, and then you can, if you choose to take one of those dice as your result, regardless what the others were, then you can refill a point on your drives. That's about it. There's a thing called resistance, which you'll have in some of your higher stats, and you can spend that point to re-roll some dice if you don't like the result. So it's actually quite hard to fail, quite easy to succeed at a cost, and reasonably easy to succeed outright when you consider all the bonus dice and everything that you can get. So the setting is kind of a blend of, I'd say, Northern Europe and America. It's just after their equivalent of the First World War, which was called the Last Great War, but it ended more like the Second World War with the detonation of a huge electro bomb that killed like tens of thousands of enemy soldiers at a stroke and put the war to an end. So it's in the peace following that war. Magic and monsters do exist, but they're generally in the background. Normal people on the street don't necessarily know that they exist or that magic exists. There was an old ancient empire that dabbled in magic too much and fell, and you're all members of this organization, Candela Obscura, which is devoted to keeping the evil Gribblies at bay one way or another. We're based in the city of New Fair, which is not the capital, but it is a big, bright, modern city built on the bones of the old, and is vibrant and dynamic and interesting in all of the kind of ways that are useful. So I will bring everyone in. We'll do quick little character interactions and introductions. It's an improvisational game, so I'm going to drop them right in it, and we'll see how things go. Oh, and by the way, you can tip now if you want to. If you enjoy the game, or if you want to tip and alter the flow of the game by giving them a bonus dice or taking something away, I will be happy to accept your money and dick over the players or help them, whichever you prefer. All right, you are all muted, I think, apart from Braden, so you may want to unmute. Thank you for the hat appreciation, Doc. All right. So, yes, you have all had some brush with the supernatural in the past, which has led to you being recruited by Candela Obscura. Your base of operations, as part of the Circle of the Pendulum, your chapter house is in what used to be an old town hall with a striking clock tower, the frontage of which is an old rundown candle shop, because the hall hasn't been used as a hall for some time. And with everything being electrified, people don't buy candles so much anymore. The rooms that you've been given are in amongst the old wax vats, machinery and cogs out back, away from prying eyes. And you've spent some time getting used to it, getting to know each other, training, and so on. And your assignments will be handled by the Lightkeeper, Mr. Cyrus Chandler, a crusty old hand who used to be an investigator and protector for Candela Obscura, but nowadays minds the store and gives you interesting leads to follow. So, would you care to give me a brief introduction to each of your characters? Improvise as necessary. Let's start with Dr. King and move right and then down.
Dr. King, late 50s perhaps, plum-coloured Rupert Bear-coloured trousers, Rupert Bear yellow and black check trousers, a mustard waistcoat and a violently clashing plum velvet, almost like a tailcoat, sort of frock coat. His dress is almost willfully old-fashioned, pre-war, in fact. He is... nobody really knows his first name, since he insists on everybody using his title. He's a pedant, but in his own way a renowned scholar of the religious imagery of the ascendancy. He specializes in locating old manuscripts. Particularly, he's fascinated with illumination and illustration. Temperamentally, he is, as I say, fussy, pedantic, but haunted by the generation of his students who were lost during the war, which lends him a certain melancholy.
And Edwin?
Good afternoon, old chap. I'm Edwin Cushway, roving reporter with the New Fair Gazette. Always keen to find a good story, a latest scoop, and advance my journalistic career. And usual accoutrements, I'm usually seen with my trusty portable camera in hand, ready to get that all-important photographic evidence that we need for a story or investigation. I think he was. I'm not quite sure exactly when the war finished. He looks a bit young to have served in the war.
Yeah, I think it was 4 years ago by standard canon. So
I don't know what the age of serving was. So
you would have been too young even to pretend you were old enough.
Right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Okay. And Brinmore?
I'm Brynmore Devereux, occultist. joined the organisation primarily because of my interest in the supernatural and having had some experience with it. Honestly, I'm not really sure how to describe this guy. Imagine Aleister Crowley, I guess, but wearing a smoking jacket like Hugh Hefner. that would probably sum up his personality as well.
I envisioned him as a little bit Rasputin-y as well. I think it's the beard.
Yeah.
But right. And Daisy?
Daisy is half Indian, and she parents were killed, and so she went to live on the reservation with her grandfather, who was a shaman, mystic type person, and she kind of grew up in the wild, fighting and that kind of thing, and she just has a thirst for adventure and drinking and kicking ass.
Right. So let's see. So half Indian, by which you mean Native American equivalent, right?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. So, and this is a world without the racial prejudices and things that we expect from our own world. So let's say that these reservations, they're actually more like cultural preservation areas where the old tribal and pagan ways of the past, of the deep past, are attempting to be preserved. So it doesn't have quite the same stigma and so on that it might otherwise have, and people won't look at you sideways for telling them that your grandfather was a shaman or whatever. They'll just nod and smile approvingly, probably.
All right.
All right. So since you've been gathered together and put into this chapter house following your various occult experiences, perhaps Dr. King found a manuscript that was a little unusual in that it changed or it prophesied things slightly wrong. Perhaps Edwin witnessed a supernatural murder in the course of his investigation. Bryn Mawr has been an occultist for some time, so he's actively sought out the occult. And perhaps Daisy saw something during a vision quest or something that deeply upset her. But the organization Candela Obscura has sought each of you out and brought you together at the chapter house in the old candle shop, with Mr. Chandler as your light keeper and handler. And as well as keeping down your day jobs, you've been busy there training, getting your rooms in order, and so on. The shop doesn't see much in the way of customers or anything else, so you're largely undisturbed. Mr. Chandler keeps his hand in, making candles from time to time, and when he does, the whole place smells of paraffin and melting beeswax, which is pleasant and unpleasant by degrees. Sometimes he'll press you into service to help him dip the wicks to form the candles. He does insist that no electric light be allowed within his premises, though he has compromised and allowed gaslight to be put in, just as the rest of the city is electrifying. So, yes, there's a lot of soot about. But he has sent runners with messages to each of you at your daily place of work, and has encouraged you all to come by this evening, as he has a case for you to work.
Depending upon the time of arrival, Dr. King will arrive precisely at the time the invitation is set for. So I don't know whether other people might arrive early and or late.
if they do, they'll see you pacing up and down outside looking at your pocket watch.
Yes, I'm literally waiting for it to strike.
So Edwin arrives depending on the vicarities of his day's work, so may have got held up with just depending on the last minute story, and he arrives a few minutes late.
Brindle's going to arrive slightly early. He was busy studying occult manuscripts when the messenger came. And the messenger wanted him for something occult, so nothing better to do.
Yep, that's what you exist for.
I switched to coffee at my bartending job and work on getting sobered up.
Right. All right. So, yes, individually, you arrive. Eventually, Mr. Chandler shows up at the door and unlocks it to usher you all in. Looks suspiciously outside at the new electric street lamp that's been put in across the road, and then shuts the door pointedly, almost as if he's deliberately slamming it in the electric light's face. Come in. Come through to the back and sit down. I got us a little supper.
Ah, Mr. Chandler, it is always a very great pleasure.
Yes, the good doctor. A fine day looking into old things.
Passable. Lunch at college was below par, so I look forward to the treats you have for the festive board for us this evening.
Yeah.
Sniffs deeply, approving of the smell of candle wax and tallow. He shares Chandler's dismissive attitude to electrification.
Yeah, anything newfangled, really. Yes, so Mr. Chandler leads you all through, sits you down around the table. There is a fine ploughman's repast set out. Cooked ham, still steaming slightly. New potatoes and butter. Vegetables from the local market. He seems to actually put in an effort. Of course, the gas lamps aren't lit, and the table is festooned with candles. Yeah, sit. Get something. Get something in you. Wine, perhaps.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
He pours some glasses of a fairly hearty red vintage and hands them out. The poor old duffer is a bit slow on his feet, so it takes quite a while before he sits. Leads you all in a prayer of thanks to the mother, and then you can tuck in. And after a reasonable amount of time has passed, you've had a chance to chat and gossip and so on and settle in. You're all still getting to know each other at this point, so interesting goss back and forth. But then when enough time has passed for it not to be impolite, he taps his fork against the side of his glass. Ding, 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 ding. So this isn't just part of our usual training. I think rather we've landed a bit of an assignment. My experience tells me that there's more to this tale than I think was getting on. There's a young woman, Millie Ladyard, from down in the paupers area, downtown, where the houses are stacked one atop another. She turned up abruptly. She had left for a job elsewhere in the city, and then she turned up abruptly, rather unwell and anemic, shall we say, at her parents' old house, and the poor girl died that very night. They can't afford a doctor or anything, but word came back to me, and it all seemed rather rum. So I did offer that we would take a look into things. Put the girls' parents' minds at rest, shall we say? And then he lowers his head, cuts himself another slice of ham.
It seems like a fascinating assignment.
Of course, the gossip's all full of nonsense about vampires and what have you, but I suspect that's not the case.
Well, I suspect it could be any number of things. Vampires remains a possibility.
Yeah. Not in my career have I ever once encountered a vampire, but as you say, there are plenty of other possibilities. It could even be something more prosaic, perhaps a doctor of loose morals with a fascination for hematology. Who knows?
What kind of doctor are you, Dr. King?
Dr. King is firmly of the view that there is only one kind of doctor. Practitioners of medicine are awarded an honorary title, which isn't the same thing at all. Since you ask, my thesis was on images of the mother.
I see. So, do we have anyone here who has any form of expertise in anatomy?
A breeze blows through the room, and a small tangle of salad bobs slowly across the table.
Not personally, but I think I might know a guy who can probably help with that. I've got some contacts at the hospital for some previous work. Yeah. What do we know about the tragic deceased at this point?
Millie Ladyard, third daughter of 5 daughters of the Ladyard family, the oldest, as I understand it. Father's Mr. Nick Ladyard. He does casual sort of day labourer work sort of stuff. And mother Anna Ladyard, she takes in laundry from her neighbours, gives it a good old scrub-a-dub and patches it up, that sort of thing. Good, fine, salt of the earth sort of people, really.
How old was the girl?
I believe she was 17 at the time of her death. Untimely, rather.
Edwin's got his notepad out and is taking this down as we talk.
Does Cushway work for the broadsheets or the penny dreadfuls?
I'd like to think the broadsheets.
Okay, fair enough.
Not top broadsheets, but at least mid-tier broadsheets.
I will spare you then Dr. King's patronising contempt for the salubrious nature of the penny dreadfuls. That's fine. Okay.
Right. Okay. And do we know where the body was found?
As I understand it, she managed to make her way home, albeit rather unwell. And she was put to rest in one of the rooms by herself, so everyone else had to crowd in elsewhere. And then when they came to check on her in the morning, perhaps find a doctor or nurse doing some charitable work in the area, and they found her deceased.
Ooh.
Where is the young lady's body now?
Well, I imagine they'll want to bury her rather swiftly, not being able to afford preservatives and proper funerary arrangements and so on. So if you do want to see the body, I would suggest making your way there post haste, probably as soon as we finish this meal. Perhaps even skip dessert.
Can I just quick background check? What's the position in this setting about autopsies and bodies and things?
I imagine that a lot of people would personally be against them, but that they are, allowed, and attitudes are changing post-war, I suspect.
Right.
It's hard to know whether Dr. King's shudder is derived from the fact that he's going to have to miss the blancmange, or whether he's going to have to venture down into the stews.
Well, yeah, I hadn't really thought of that, but you're right. If you want to see the body, I think time is of the essence. I'll make up some sandwiches from the leftovers, and you can swing by to get them later. I'll put the blancmange in the cool box and see if I can get a treacle tart. Get some slices of that.
Well, beyond going to see the body, do we have any other leads to go on, gentlemen?
Whatever job she was pursuing, but I'm afraid I didn't tug on that particular thread before I took the assignment. So,
just in case it is vampires, we should probably take some precautionary measures with the body.
Well, lump of blackthorn through the breast, that sort of thing. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Sourcing blackthorn at this time of the evening, trifle difficult. Best stick to a beheading, old boy.
I'm not sure how the family might feel about that. A piece of blackthorn through the chest would potentially be something that could be hidden by her funeral garments.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Are you an expert on these vampires, Mr. Devereaux?
Well, I have some knowledge of them. I've never actually come across one, but in the course of my studies, I have read about them.
Well, since you seem to keep bringing the matter up, is there someone we could test to see if that is the case?
Well, if the body rises in the next few days, then it's a vampire. That would be the most simple of tests.
Yeah, I was hoping for something a little less dramatic.
You don't want to let it get to that stage. You would normally behead the body or drive a stake through its heart.
Is there some sort of test with items of the church or mirrors or such like?
Well, once it's risen as a vampire, yes.
Well, in any case, gentlemen, if this is our only lead, I suppose we had better skip dessert and press on.
I'll clear the table then. And Mr. Chandler gets up and begins laboriously clearing the table.
Before we leave, do you have a pencil that I could borrow?
A pencil?
Do we have pencils in this setting? I'm sure they were invented around.
Yes. There are plenty of pencils, pens, and other accoutrements around here that you can take.
Okay. I'm going to drive a pencil through her chest.
Just to be safe.
Yeah. It's not
all
like
right.
She's mind. Well, hopefully.
There are a few holdover horse-drawn carriages as a way to get around. There's also cable-driven streetcars and more conventional cars, though they're a bit bumpy and not entirely reliable yet. So you have plenty of options for taking yourselves to the Ladyard's address. presumably all traveling together, so probably take a couple of cable cars down there.
Yes, and Dr. King spends is one of these people, amongst the youth who like to disport themselves by alighting from and jumping on these things while before they've come to a full and proper standstill. Dr. King insists on standing there, waiting as it slows to an absolute crawl. Still waits until it comes to a dead stop before he gets on.
Yes, wouldn't want to injure yourself, do yourself a mischief of any kind. All right. Yes, so it's a fair journey from the slightly old-fashioned area of the Chandlers down to the more impoverished districts. Now, if I'm remembering correctly, setting-wise, so this will be South Soffit. That's the lower class area. Okay, so New Fair is built basically on top of Old Fair. Old Fair was an ancient city that fell during mysterious archaeological disaster thing that Candela Obscura puts down to magic, and which normal people put down to. And South Soffit is actually sort of built down amongst and intermingled with the ruins of Old Fair. And it's built in layers. The lower down, the better, because fumes and smoke and stuff tends to rise and choke people on the upper levels of that district. So the cable cars take you most of the way, but then you have to hoof it. And the cobblestones and paving give way to broken stone, gravel, mud, and less mentionable detritus in the streets. There's no real rhyme or reason to the way in which the buildings have been built here. Whenever possible, they fill out or cling onto the sides of the old ruins. And even if it wasn't night, it would be pretty dark down here. You pass through a layer of smog and soot on your way down, and then following the address as best you can to find the place. So let's make a roll, shall we, to find our way there. So I guess the actions aren't very well defined. So finding your way, would that be a move action under nerve, or a survey action under intuition? I think survey is more likely for finding a way. Move is more about physical actions, I suppose. All right.
I would volunteer to do a survey roll because it's gilded for me, so that's obviously good. So I have a survey of 2, so it's gilded. So I think I roll 1 normal dice and 1 gilded dice. So is this right?
I think so. Let me double check. Gilding, because I'm not sure whether it's both of your skill dice or not.
Okay, I mean, skill by the cheat sheet, it said you replace 1 dice, but that's cheat sheet.
Yeah. When you're rolling with a gilded action, replace 1 of your standard dice with a gilded die.
Okay, so I won't add any extra points. I'll just roll my native 2 dice.
Okay.
Aha! I've got 1 on both of them.
Okay, so if you had spent any points,
it's this way.
you could have had 1 of those back. All right. So, yes, Edwin seems confident, and as an intrepid reporter, clearly he's pursued many of a story down here before. This would have been a standard stakes roll, so that's a failure. Okay. So compared to the people who live down here, you are all fairly well off and clean looking. So Edwin's leading you down the various streets, but not all of them have signposts. And it's not too long before you're kind of well lost. And as you stop and try to get your bearings, a few rough-looking gentlemen in much patched suits emerge from a small hostelry nearby and seem to size you all up, and then nod to each other and begin to walk towards your group with a purpose. Reactions.
What's the equivalent of like intimidate on there?
I believe that would be sway.
Okay. Well, I have a shotgun hidden on my person, and I'd like to just sort of flash it and try to intimidate them to keep moving on.
Okay, make a sway roll. Do you want to spend any cunning to boost it?
Yes, because I don't have. Yes, I've got 2 in cunning, but I have 0 in sway. So
Am I
Okay.
able to assist with it at all? Because I was
Yes.
thinking I'd grab my
Yeah,
dagger and
you're quite an you're quite an imposing chap. So if you want to spend a point from your cunning pool, you can kind of loom behind Daisy and give her an extra dice.
yeah, that's
So then I'll have
Okay.
2.
fine.
So you've now got 2 dice. Yeah.
Okay.
So roll and tell me the highest.
4.
4. So that is a mixed success. What is that going to be in this instance? Okay. On seeing the gun, you can actually see the cogs turning in their brains as they eye you all up. But Bryn is like glowering at them with his mesmerist stare from behind your shoulder, and between that and the sawn-off shotgun revealed beneath your coat, they decide discretion is the better part of valor and back away. But you have the distinct impression that you might see them again if you're not careful.
Well, gents, that went well.
Does Edwin want to try and lead everyone to the right place now? Or do the rest of you not trust
Let's see
him?
if I can get my bearings. Okay, so
My
2
specialty
dice.
is explorer, so I think I've got a 2 as well.
Well, actually, tell you what, I can put a point in it. So I'll spend I'll spend 1 point of intuition for an extra dice because I might get it
Okay.
back.
So that gives you 3 dice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got a 6 on my gilded dice and another 6 on my normal dice.
So that's a critical, and you get that point back.
Yeah, hooray! Right.
Okay.
Hey guys, I said this was the right way. You just have to go in this corner. And here we are.
Yes, if you just held your nerve and kept walking in this direction, you would have gotten right there. Okay. You arrive at what, according to Mr. Chandler, is the right address. It's a lower class working hovel that's split over 2 levels. It looks like it's been built with odds and ends and scraps and kind of kept up over the years. The windows don't look like they fit quite right, and the glass doesn't match. But it's it's reasonably solidly built place, and the front step is polished within an inch of its life. However, the curtains are all drawn, though some wan candle light makes its way out through the cracks in the curtains and the holes in the cloth.
Oh, I guess I'll knock the door.
The door opens, and see a young girl in a patched dress, looking very sad and red-eyed. She's got a black kerchief tied around her arm, and looks up at you because you're quite an imposing figure. Good evening.
Good evening. We've been sent to offer our condolences for your recent loss. and we wonder if we may inspect the body of the recently departed. We believe there may be some signs of foul play.
She stares at you, confused for a moment, then turns her head back to the house and shouts, "Ma'am, there's some gentlemen here." A rather stolid-looking woman in a black dress appears from one of the back rooms of the house and fusses the girl out of the way. You here to see us? You seem lost.
My deepest condolences for your loss, madam. We have been sent regarding your recently departed daughter. The daughter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She,
your recently departed daughter. We've been led to believe there may be some form of foul play involved with her departure. And we're wondering if it would be possible to inspect the body before the appropriate funerary arrangements are taken care of.
Oh, it's kind of you to take an interest, she says, and composes herself before she bursts into tears again. She's laid out at the moment, in the bedroom. You're welcome to have a look.
Can I attempt a read roll on her just to see if all she's been genuine?
Yes, you can. So that's a cunning roll.
Okay, that's read 2. It's gilded. I'll go for the 5 on the gilded dice.
Okay, so success with some kind of consequence. Yeah, she's being genuine. Absolutely. Holding it together for the kids' sake, you reckon? But there's some sort of underlying anger. But she does notice you kind of examining her and seems a little bit affronted at your Paddington stare. But nonetheless, politely, she covers it up and ushers you to the creaky, narrow staircase that leads up to the bedroom.
Now, just so that you're aware, the examination will be intimate. You may wish to leave the room while we perform it.
No, I'll leave you be. I can't bear to look at her. Well, you conduct yourselves to the room. Inside, all the paintings and the mirrors have been turned to face the wall. A single tall candle burns in one corner of the room, providing the only light Mr. Chandler would approve. And Millie's body is laid out on the bed, arms folded, dressed, eyes closed, weighed down with coins, ready to be taken off and buried.
Well, we're going to need to strip her naked, check for any marks.
All right, well, step by step, any of you looking at anything in particular, or take me through the process and I'll give you the information.
So Edwin will get his portable camera out while this is going on and take a good autopsy photograph of the body. Because we need to study it later.
So it's a loud bang and a blinding flash of light, and you expose the plate.
Okay, great.
As
I mentioned earlier, chaps, I mean, we do what we can here, but I know that this isn't necessarily anyone's food expertise. I do know a guy who can possibly help with this matter further.
Yeah. Well, I suggest you take pictures of both sides of the body in case anything shows up on the back or on the front.
Oh, well, that's a good idea, though. I only have 5 plates left, so I want to use them judiciously.
Okay,
So
so
perhaps if you spot something in particular, he can take
Yes.
another picture.
yeah, so we'll strip her completely naked and just check every inch of her body for anything that could be puncture marks, any bruises, and anything that indicates any sort of struggle.
Okay, she's wearing a fairly chaste sort of maid's uniform, with a little cloth cap to keep her hair up, and a pinny. That all looks. Her clothes look fairly new. You know, looking at the rest of her family, their clothing's all pretty patched and old. You know, you wear it till it falls off, but practically. But her clothes and her shoes all look fairly new as you sort of take them off, set them aside, and then examine the body. So that's going to be a survey roll, I guess. So
who on that? So I would roll 2 dice.
yeah, but you can spend points from intuition to add bonus dice, or anyone else helping with the examination can spend intuition points to give you additional dice.
I'm going to spend 2 intuition points on it. So that'll give me 4.
4 dice. Yeah.
I've got a 6 and a 5 in there, so we'll take the 6.
Okay. So that's a complete success. Okay. So checking her over, yeah, she's fairly anemic. You've done some research on bloodletting rituals and probably experimented with it yourself in the past. You reckon she's maybe a pint down on what she should have. Her clothing close to her waist was stained a little bit with blood, but nowhere near the amount that would have had to have come out of her to make up a pint. That was just a mere spattering, like a small cut or something. When you examine her, there's some bruising around her waist on the left-hand side, and a small puncture wound, maybe the size of a pencil lead, perhaps, close to the bruised area, sort of overlapping the bruised area, and there is something stuck in that little puncture wound.
Could I take a closer look at the thing that's stuck in it?
Yep. Pull the candle closer. No, you already succeeded really well, so I'll just let this roll on. Okay. Yeah, that's something stuck in there. It almost looks like a screw thread, but it's not metal, and it looks like it's snapped off.
Is it possible to remove it, or is it deeply embedded?
Pulling at it, because there's just enough to grab hold of. That doesn't work because it's kind of screwed in. You could laboriously unscrew it, or you could make a couple of cuts around the wound to get it free.
I'll just cut it out. She ain't gonna mind.
Okay. Yeah. So you probably got a ritual knife, don't you?
Yeah, I've got my.
Yeah. So Brimmore produces a rather arcane-looking knife from somewhere in his jacket, makes a couple of swift cuts, and plucks the thing free. She's been dead about a day, but weirdly, the blood around the wound pours quite freely for a moment. You have to staunch it with a handkerchief. It should have begun to congeal, and it's still liquid. When you pluck the thing free, yeah, it's definitely not metal. It's not wood. It feels almost like Bakelite or lacquer, but it's broken off. Where it's broken off, it's kind of partially bent and partially splintered. Make a survey roll to try and figure out what it is.
I'll just take the 2 dice for this one. I've got 5.
Okay. You peer at it even more closely. Hold it up to the light. It feels like chitin, like beetle shells or something like that. And ow, you prick yourself on the point at the end, and your thumb begins to bleed, and it bleeds a lot more freely than it should. It takes quite a while, and you have to use another handkerchief before it finally stops bleeding.
I mean, I do blood magic, so I'm guessing I would know enough about blood that there are things that will stop it from clotting.
Yeah, there are various poisons that can cause blood to flow more freely. Some insect bites will bleed more freely due to poisons that the insects inject. There are also medical conditions that can cause blood to stream and to not congeal as rapidly or at all.
So I'll turn to the party and say, I don't believe that this was a vampire. Take a look at this. This looks like perhaps something of a large insect, which would be consistent with the blood not clotting around the injury there.
Dr. King removes from his mouth and nose the lavender-coloured handkerchief that he's been wearing since he crossed the threshold. Peers at this thing. He hasn't looked. He doesn't. He consciously will not look at the body. He's almost turning his back on it. But once Mr. Devereaux is in a position to show him this without him having to leer over the corpse of this young woman, Dr. King will examine it with no particular pretense at understanding what it is. But he will reach into his pocket and pull out a gnarled, wooden bowled pipe, which he fills with what is it that's Vivian Stanchel said, a grotesque rum-soaked shag.
Who hasn't had one of those?
Exactly. Tamps this into the bowl whilst clamping it between his teeth, lights it with a lucifer, and blows out the smoke, which has a very happy tendency to drift towards magical flare or remnants, I assume.
Yes, that's your special magic item. All right. The smoke curls and coils in a serpentine fashion around the room. It orbits the candle briefly, then drifts back towards the body, hovering for a moment around the wound in the side, and then drifting across again to the fragment of chitin that Bryn Mawr is holding. And then it slowly drifts down to the floor and disappears through a gnawed rat hole in the skirting board.
Could I quickly investigate where I cut this out, just to make sure that whatever it is hasn't laid eggs in her?
Yeah, you sort of put your handkerchief over your hand and peel apart the wound slightly. There are a few other splinters of whatever proboscis this was, but you don't see any eggs or anything. The blood is still fairly liquid there, but it is finally starting to congeal as the air gets to it. But there's some few drops of whatever toxin this is that keeps the blood flowing, sort of smeared on the flesh inside.
Well, just to be on the safe side, I'd like to put a small incision on her chest and put that pencil in there.
Yeah.
Can't be too careful.
And you sort of brace it with the heel of your palm and push until it cracks through the chest plate.
Yeah. Well, I think we've probably found all that we can here. This young girl was unfortunately killed by whatever this came from. Seems to have injured it in the process. I'm not sure exactly what this thing is, though. Not something I've come across in my studies.
Hmm.
Dr. King, any references to possibly large insects in any of the manuscripts that you've read? Anything historical?
I regret to say that the ancients were not overly concerned with entomology, but certainly Mr. Chandler was right. This is not. We are not looking for a natural cause here.
I mean, this is a large insect rather than a large snail, which I understand regularly appears in the religious texts.
Fatal mistake. Oh yes, now that's a very interesting subject. I read a monogram on this not 3 months ago, and off he will go unless stopped.
Yeah, well, your lecture is somewhat interrupted by the slamming sound of a door downstairs and a male voice raised in anger.
Well, I suggest that we put the clothes back on this young lady as quickly as we can and in as neat a fashion as we can.
While they were doing all of that, I would kind of like to look at the clothing and see if it had any, any signs that might lead us to her whereabouts.
Yes. So the pinafore has a very particularly embroidered H prominently displayed on it. Can you make a read roll, please? Don't forget to spend.
Yeah, I'll have to spend 1
Points if
point
you
of cunning. My last point of cunning.
Okay. Even if you have no dice, you can roll, but you roll 2 and take the lowest.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll just do that then. Okay. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't know. Okay. So
Yeah. So that is an option.
5 and a 2.
So 2, which is a failure. You don't recognize the H, but you do make note of it. Someone's given her new clothes and shoes and this lovely penny.
Sure. While they're reclothing the body, can I step over towards the door, maybe open a crack and do some kind of listening roll to see if I can figure out what's going on downstairs?
Yeah. Make a sense roll. I'll give you a free bonus dice, even though that's not an official rule, because they're shouting and it's a small house.
Okay, so that's just 2 dice. It's not gilded. Plus 1 from bonus dice. A 4.
So success with drawbacks. Okay. You think that must be Mr. Ladyard arriving home. He sounds intoxicated and angry. Like someone's wound him up. He is arguing vociferously with his wife. You hear a thump, which is probably the good lady being pushed to one side, and the sound of heavy hobnail boots stamping up the twisted staircase.
Gentlemen, it seems the man of the house has returned. Perhaps we should see if we can politely be on our way if we finished here.
Are we finished putting our clothes back on?
Yes. And you do have a young lady with you who is familiar with ladies' intimates. So, yeah, you were not foxed by fastenings and things through lack of familiarity. All right, but the door does.
Familiar with ladies. undergarments.
Yes, I'm sure.
Well,
Right, but the door does burst open, and the sudden rush of air almost snuffs the candle, which dances about. And yes, this is presumably Mr. Ladyard, who is ruddy-faced with drink and clearly quite furious. What the bloody hell's going on here? Leave our Millie alone.
Now, sir, there's no need for you to be angry. We're here simply to investigate the cause of her passing. We have found something which I think you may need to be made aware of. She does appear to have been poisoned. But not to worry, we are going to hunt for her killer.
Poisoned? What proof have you got of that? Is one of you a doctor or something?
I'm an expert in these sorts of matters. We've had to do a thorough examination. I'm reluctant to cause the young lady any more, well, not discomfort, but would perhaps not be polite to have to remove her clothes again now that the examination is over.
Again? Was it necessary to...
It was necessary. Now, in this area here, and I'll just gesture to the area that the thing I removed was, there was a small piece of this, and I'll show him what we've removed, which appears to have been used as a means of injecting a poison into her, which has caused her blood to fail to clot.
Right. Can you make a sway roll? Out of everything you've said, the only words he's really understood are that you stripped his dead daughter naked.
Yeah, I figured that would probably be the case.
Yeah. So can you make a high stakes sway roll, please?
One die. Let's... No, it'd be funny if it fails. 5. Damn it.
So success with some consequences. Yeah. All right. He just seems to get redder and angrier while you blather on in technical language that he doesn't really understand. He brings back one big, meaty, calloused fist, and you swear to the ascendancy that he is about to pound your face into corned beef. But then he suddenly and abruptly seems to stop, and all of the hate and venom and annoyance that he had just seems to sort of leak out of him, and he becomes meek and quiescent almost. You just find whatever bastard did this to Millie and see justice done.
We fully intend to, sir. I'm sorry that we've had to take these measures to investigate it, but I'm sure you can understand if she were just laid to rest without the investigation, then justice could not have been done.
And he just sort of collapses down into the corner chair in the room. Chaps, if you're leaving me stuff in the private chat, it's very hard for me to juggle the various things that are going on and remember to check that, so I won't see it in a timely fashion. So if you need to ask something, try and ask it. All right. So, what next?
Edwin, do you happen to know a guy who knows about bugs?
I can check with my contacts back at the office. I'm sure we know someone. If I don't know someone, I'm sure one of my colleagues does.
It seems to be our main lead here.
That's our only lead. I'm just trying to consider. Perhaps it's also worth checking in with the local constabulary, see if there's been any other suspicious deaths of late.
Yes, that would be very sensible.
you'll have to forgive my. I'm somewhat cloistered in matters of criminal investigation, but it seems to me that this here, and he can barely bring himself to glance over at the body. This here is a monogram, such as one might find in a great house, and she is, after all, dressed in her best working clothes. Perhaps we might endeavour to find out where she spent her days.
If someone else wants to make a roll to try and recognize the monogram, they can.
What's that
Otherwise,
under?
that would be
Sense? Oh, I don't know.
No, not really. It's more of a knowledge thing. So I guess focus for memory, I suppose.
It's not great. Yeah, it's not great. If your basic knowledge roll isn't clear on the system. Yeah.
Yeah, focus, I think we'll go with.
Okay.
Well, like all academics, of course, Dr. King is acutely aware of where the money actually comes from and pays attention to this sort of thing. So he may have some kind of facility with, personal monograms and things like that. So focus, yeah?
Focus, yeah.
Okay.
Probably better to do it as a group roll to see if someone remembers rather than you all roll separately. So choose someone to lead the roll, and then anyone who wants to can spend intuition to add bonus dice.
Well, I have focus gilded, so I can.
Yeah, go on. I'm just going to tap the solo roll 1 dice. No, I fell. Right, carry on.
All right, carry on. So, Dr. King.
Yes. So that's a 5 on the gilded dice. Is there a penalty for rolling 1s on everything else?
No, and you can take the gilded dice, which means you get a point back in that pool, and that's a success with some kind of slight drawback to it. Okay, which isn't obvious in this case because remembering stuff is pretty low stakes. You believe that to be the company monogram of the Hardwood Company. They make rope and string and wool for the garment industry, that sort of thing.
Okay, I've just had a sort of a slight idea for a drawback, which is that I grotesquely and badly at a high table at a fundraising dinner, I really offended the head of the family.
Okay, yeah, that works. He might not remember you, but you remember embarrassing yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I will report this information. And he doesn't, Dr. King. He's many things, but one of the things he is brutally and stupidly honest. And so he actually trots out all of this information. Oh yes, Hardwood trade people, etc., etc. Had a ghastly dinner with the man.
Yes. Spilled gin on his crotch. Quite the fuss. So sort of general information about the Hardwoods. So it's an old family. They were one of the early sort of industrialist families that helped build up New Fair. Rich beyond the dreams of avarice, largely originally through making nets for the fishing industry and rope for ships, that sort of thing. These days they've diversified a lot. The current owner, operator, etc. of the Hardwood Company is Mr. Warren Hardwood, which is who Dr. King met at the meal. He's still fairly young, untested, born to riches, very very nouveau riche sort of guy.
King will be able to probably narrate all that, putting his sort of usual sort of enormously wealthy. Trade, of course, trade. But I defer to Mr. Cushway, whose professional life takes him into lower portions of society than mine does, to know whether Hardwood has a particular central business office or some kind of way of contacting them.
Yes. So probably without a role, Edwin knows that Warren Hardwood, the current head of the family, he's very much lives in the shadow of his father and grandfather, and barely has his own identity, really. He carries on the philanthropic tendency of his father and grandfather. Think of them as sort of the equivalent to Cadbury's in the real world. They've got this long history of philanthropy, providing for the poor, advancing working conditions, that sort of thing. They got a very good reputation, in fact, the Hardwood name, but Warren, not so much.
Okay, I'll relate all that. What's their trade exactly?
Rope, string, fiber. Yeah.
Doesn't that fall under the general heading of cord waning, doesn't it?
I believe it does, yes.
Cord waning is making shoes.
Was it?
Is it? Ah, okay.
So
I'm curious now, what is a rope maker called? Yeah, roper. That's all. Nothing interesting like Chandler.
Make sure you say it correctly.
Yeah. Woper.
Yeah, cord waning comes from cordovan, type of leather.
Yeah.
Ah,
now cool. You know. Knowing is half the battle. Well, so what next?
Well, gentlemen, it seems we have, two possible leads. We can try to track down a bug expert to tell us more about whatever this is. Though, from what you've said, this may not be a natural bug. Alternatively, as I say, if the girl was working, what do we think? Maybe was she working in service to the Hardwood family? Maybe. Then there might be a lead there to follow in terms of maybe that's why she came into contact with something. It's either that or we see if there's been any other similar deaths in the city of late.
Well, I think seeing if there are any other similar deaths would be a good idea in case any are linked to this company that she worked for before we go there.
Okay. I presume the paper has an obituaries column. So I presume
yeah. So you could return to the office.
I could at least check recent archives, see if these obituaries on any what we were looking for exactly. Other deaths of unexpected deaths of healthy people who've died in similar way, in similar circumstances.
Yep. Okay. So, returning to the offices of the paper, which is busy 24 hours a day, but no one bats too much of an eyelid at you turning up with strange people in tow.
Yep.
So let's see. Going through the records. Survey roll. Under intuition.
My 2 gilded. Let's spend the point because I'm going to hopefully get it back. Right. Oh, we'll go for the 5 on the gilded dice.
Okay, so you get the point back, and it's success with a drawback. So let's see. Okay. I mean, people down there are so poor that they don't normally get obituaries. However, you do get figures from the constabulary, who I think are called the Periphery. Yes, the police force is called the Periphery. So yeah, they do collect statistics on deaths in general, and flipping back and forth between different districts and different times of that record, which takes a while, but you've got the others to run as dogs' bodies for you. There is a slight uptick in the number of people dying in the area, which is at a distressingly high number anyway. But yeah, it does seem like there's maybe an extra 5 to 10 people each reporting period turning up dead in the district, but there's no more details than that, really.
Okay, so related to that. So it seems, gentlemen, that the number of deaths in this district, it does seem to have risen, and it's continuing to rise. So perhaps this is not an unrelated case.
I'm wondering if this is some kind of large bug, which it would appear to be, given what we know of the injury that was caused, although I suppose it may be something else. This company that she worked for, being a rope maker and making wool, I would guess is importing raw materials from somewhere. Perhaps whatever this is came in with their raw materials. Perhaps we should go and investigate there and see if there have been any strange occurrences that they could advise us of.
So do you want to... sorry.
I was just saying,
Go on.
how do we want to best approach them? What's the best line to take here?
Well, I would imagine that they are an innocent party in this. I mean, the companies are generally run by people rather than whatever this is.
Agreed. Though, I mean, they may well be concerned for their reputation.
Can I just ask a quick world-building question here? Are we meant to be a covert organisation?
Yes.
So, I mean, I can approach them in a capacity as a journalist, investigate a story, but I suspect they will immediately clam up.
And private detectives and sort of Holmesian detectives are part of the setting as well. So just keep the supernatural stuff on the down low.
If I might, I venture to suggest again. I lack much experience in the way of dissimulation and so on and so forth. But it seems to me that we wouldn't be straying too far from the truth to suggest that we were undertaking some sort of potential investigation into matters of public health.
Oh, that could work, or on the other hand, though, it could spook them if they think that they are under investigation.
Edwin, do you have access to contact on the docks, and maybe we could get the shipping records of the last couple of weeks of where things have come in?
I can try, but I'm not sure what that will tell you. I'm sure some ships have come in.
Well, I meant more of their ships. I mean, and maybe we could at least derive, if the theory is that it came in on something, maybe if we knew, where their ships came from, maybe that'll lead us to what it might be.
My feeling is we should go and speak to this company, investigate them, or speak to the Hardwood family. I think the only matter is let's come up with the right kind of approach. Let's not go in as an obviously hostile party or a party trying to expose some public health scare that they're responsible for. Perhaps we can present it as, I don't know. Needs thought.
Well, I mean, a public health scare does seem like a good angle. It's just making sure that they're aware that they are not the ones at fault.
Yes. There's another thought here. So the Hardwood family has a good reputation for supporting good causes, for supporting the poor, workers' rights. Perhaps we could approach them initially with a good cause that seeking their support. Perhaps if we spin it as public health or the health of the poor, and we can find some correct line to take there. Is this making sense?
This
So
rather
we tell them-
presumes. Sorry, go ahead, Simon.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
This rather precludes investigation of their workshop spaces and so on and so forth. But that seems to me eminently sensible. I doubt very much whether young Miss Ladyard was employed twisting great lengths of hemp and so on and so forth. Given her attire, it is much more likely to be found in the domestic situation, I would suggest. In which case, Mr. Cushway's suggestion seems to me eminently sensible. Perhaps representatives of a charity.
Well, the university is always soliciting donations.
I couldn't possibly drag the good name of the university into any subterfuge.
Oh, it's certainly another university.
Oh, you mean the other place? There are all of two, you understand.
Too worthy of the name.
Yes, the rest of them, I think they're called polytechnics, the rest of them, aren't they?
Well, I was thinking, do they have like the equivalent of polytechnics that you could just say you're from them? They're not a real university.
Trade schools and apprenticeships. Yeah.
I could go in undercover. One of y'all could use your connections and say you heard about the loss of the young lady and I need a job, and you know that they take wayward people in, and then if I can get her job, then maybe I can find out something.
Now, you see, here's an interesting aside here. In a world where there is no patriarchy, there's no reason for any of us to stop that happening. To just go, yeah, Daisy, you go into the Viper's Pit all on your lonesome. That's fine. None of us are going to concern ourselves with you at all.
She's also our fighter, so actually,
yeah.
No, equally, because there's no patriarchy, anyone can apply to be the household maid.
True.
Right.
I guess I'm going to apply as well then.
Yeah.
Rasputin.
There might be an age requirement. But no. There's an interesting idea that yes, you could approach them with a view to seeking employment separately. That I thought that might be a very long method of slow method of investigation. You could have to get a job in the other end of the house. And there's a question also here: do we want to speak to the family, the actual Hardwood family, or do we want to get stuck with some middle manager? Because if we want to speak to the family, we need to approach it the right way with the right level of status.
It seems intuitively improbable that we get to meet, the head of the family just by, turning up and knocking on the door and presenting our business cards.
You have at least met him before.
Yes, but that does not recommend each of us to the other, unfortunately, given the setback.
No.
because Miss Warren has a fine and excellent point. It's always struck me that those in service will tend to know more about what's going on in the household than the masters. Perhaps we could find some way to speak to somebody in the current domestic employ of the Hardwood family.
That's a very excellent idea, old chap. Well, yeah, if we could speak to her fellow maids, they may well know more about exactly where she worked, what she was doing, and at the very least, well, perhaps one or two of us could simply wait outside their premises, and when the household staff return to their homes, see if we can approach them in the right way and ask them simple questions.
Oh, we could wait, or we could simply go to the service entrance and knock the door.
Yeah, I was rather planning to do it a little way away from the home. They might speak more freely when they're not next to when they're not around others.
Okay. So are you all going to go and stake out the house, or a couple of you there and a couple of you chase down something else?
This doesn't seem like Dr. King's natural environment.
I mean, Dr. King, clearly you are a man of learning and position in the world. I know you're reluctant to drag the US name into this, but you could come up with some manner of approach to at least have some form of polite discussion with the representatives of the family, engage them out. Perhaps, as you say, perhaps simply just discuss funding for the university and nothing more with them. At least that would get you in the room and get us a sense. Meanwhile, other members here can tend to speak to the servants.
Well, I think maybe better if I accompany Dr. King.
Well, yes.
I think that Edwin and Daisy would be more able to reason with the common man or common woman.
Okay, splendid idea. Yeah, yes, yeah. Young servant maids might be concerned about being approached by elderly gentlemen on the street. So the two of you attempt the high approach. We'll attempt to speak to the more say common earthly approach, and we'll meet back afterwards and compare notes.
Yep, that's a plan.
Splendid.
Okay. Well, it's late, but if you two return either to the chapter house or to the university, you should be able to write a missive on appropriately headed notepaper to send to the Hardwoods, informing them that you will call round at some point to discuss potential funding for new studies at the university and how they might help each other. But the two of you can spend some time crafting the letter. And Edwin and Daisy can wait outside the house. So this will be the last scene before a new day. All right.
Just to seed the groundwork a little bit and to give Devereaux a reason to be there, the proposal is for a prosopographical survey of the incipits of occult literature in manuscript form in the university's holdings.
I understood occult literature. I'm not a university-educated man, but
no, but it has a way of leading us into the conversation without being a screeching handbrake turn from, we'd like some money. Oh, by the way, what do you know about the occult?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to think that I have a fine personal library of occult books and would be able to advise the university on acquiring its own library.
Yeah. Should he actually cough up money for you by some chance?
We need the funding to purchase these books.
Yeah. So yes, the knowledge between the two of you is quite useful. All right. So yeah, you craft that, and then since you're older than the other two, get some rest. Meanwhile, So Edwin and Daisy hang out near the Hardwood house in the more upper class district. Let's see, where would that be in the setting? Conveniently, the Hardwood mansion is actually in Briar Green, which is close to Briarbank College. Why did I put cottage? It's college. Right. Yeah, so not that far from the university. Anyway, this is an area of wealth, art, and education in abundance, leafy suburbs, parks, public art, all of that sort of thing. Between you, choosing one of you to lead, can you make a survey roll, please?
Got a 2. What do you?
So it's us, is it?
Yeah, survey.
Yeah, I've got 2 gilded. So I'm just up at that. Oh, that's
Okay.
Spend the point. It's always going to get back anyway.
Yeah. Does Daisy want to spend a point to add as well, or?
I'm fine. I've got a 4 on the gilded dice.
Okay. Right. Yeah, so you take your positions not that far from the Hardwood mansion. And as the night wears on, you realize that unlike a lot of the other houses around, there are no lights on. No indication that anybody's in the house at the moment. Getting a bit closer to the house to inspect it a bit more completely, you realize that the curtains have been taken down, and you can see into the rooms. The interior seems to have been cleared of most of its furniture, and what remains has been covered with dust covers. And there is a sign up for one of the classier estate agents informing passers-by that the mansion is for sale.
Oh.
How closely? I assume it has like a gate around it or something. Or
Yeah, there's a 6-foot wall with a 3-foot wrought iron spike fence around the whole building.
Okay, I searched
and there is
perimeter to see if there's a good spot to maybe climb.
Yep. Can you make a survey roll, please?
Yep.
Sorry, is it survey to climb?
No, to find a way through.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
6 and a 4.
So a success. All right. You find a place where the ivy has crawled up the wall, wrapped itself around the iron railings, and draped down the other side. So that should be pretty easy to climb over. In fact, so easy you don't need to roll, so long as you're somewhat young and spry, which you both are. So if you want to infiltrate the house, you may.
Edwin, I think we ought to check this out before, it seems to be cleaned up any more than it is.
I'll defer to your judgment then. Lead on.
All right. So you easily clamber over the fence, drop down on the other side. Seems to have been abandoned a while, but someone's clearly being employed to keep the garden somewhat trim. It's a little bit wilder than it would be if someone was staying here, but still reasonably manicured. The mansion itself is a pretty large, imposing, square building, sort of Victorian Gothic sort of style to it. A bit too over-decorated for modern tastes, which are lending themselves more to Art Nouveau, that sort of thing, and Art Deco. So yeah, you could see why a younger man might abandon this house, however much history it has. It all seems to be locked up, fairly safe and sound all around. Big glass windows, eminently smashable should you want to get inside that way.
Let's try a back door, see what it looks like.
Yeah, there is a servant's entrance, blue painted, metal bound wood, studded with black iron, with a little slot in it for peeking out through, but it seems to be secure as well.
I've got this little hat pin that I like to stab people with, apparently.
Yeah.
I use that to try to jimmy the lock.
Yes. Let's see. God, these vague stats, they make it very difficult.
Control.
Right.
That's a lot.
Possibly.
Oh,
Control, drive, shoot, finesse. I guess it's finesse. So yeah, it'll be a control roll.
Okay, so I can use my 1 point of resistance and get 1 dice.
But yeah, you use resistance after you fail.
Oh,
So
well,
oh,
Give it a
you've not got any control. Oh, I see. You're like me. You'd be better off using strike and just breaking the lock with like brute force.
yeah, I was considering
Even though
that.
that's like dumb, but yes, that's the physics of the world.
Yeah, it seems a little more complicated. Maybe I'll just try to kick it in.
okay, make a strike roll.
Okay, that's gilded.
Okay, so if you choose your gilded die, you'll get a point of nerve back.
Okay. I got a 1.
Do you only have 1 dice?
No, I got 2, and I got a 6 and a 1, but a 1 on the gilded.
Okay, you don't have to take that one. You can take the 6 off the other dice.
Oh, okay. I thought you had to take the gilded. Oh, okay. Then yeah.
All right. It's remarkably, despite being such a stout door, when you give it a really hard sort of front kick, something jolts loose and the door flies open.
After you, Edwin.
Okay. Well, what can we immediately see as the door's open?
So the door
Dark.
seems to. It is dark, but there are no curtains in anything of the house, and there are electrified streetlights in this area.
So,
being as it's posh, so there's enough light to see, and your eyes have had enough chance to adjust. There's a sort of utility room back here. A couple of boot scrapers that are built into the floor so they couldn't be removed. A bunch of coat hooks, things like that, and more doors leading to other parts of the house.
Okay, well, I guess we venture inside and carefully explore the house.
Okay, rather than painstakingly go room by room, let's have you make a joint survey roll, please.
Survey. I'm 2 gilded, so if I roll and spend a point.
Hang on.
I think it's 4 and a 2.
Oh, you've rolled. Okay.
So, well, if you want to spend a point, you can give them an extra dice to roll. So.
Yeah.
I thought you meant joint. You meant like we both roll.
No, you have to combine efforts.
No, I don't want to do that because if I spend a point to help him, I don't get anything.
No, then I'll spend a point and help him. Then.
Yeah, but
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Weird.
Okay, I've got 1 of my gilded, but I've got a 6 on my non-gilded, so I'll lose the point, but I'll get to take the 6.
Okay. So you take your time and survey the entire house. It's
Yeah.
big and extensive, but a lot of the rooms don't like they've been used in some time. There's a lot of lighter patches on the walls where big paintings have been taken down and removed. The only room in the entire house which is noticeably different seems to be one of the upstairs studies, which still has a big round rug on the floor.
Okay, a big brown rug.
Big round rug.
Round rug.
Yeah.
It's a
There are a few bits of furniture here and there elsewhere, but they're covered with just dust covers, and there's nothing particularly interesting about them.
I'll look under the rug.
Okay, you roll back the rug. Underneath the rug is an ornate circular pattern of what strike you as occult sigils.
Okay. If only Mr. Duffer was here.
You could take a photograph.
Yeah, I could take a photograph. That's our next play. Yeah, okay. Those understanding occult signals would be what? Focus?
God, well, yeah. I mean, you're not an occultist. It would be read, actually.
Oh,
wouldn't it?
read?
I think.
I'm really good at that. Okay, yeah, because there's no concept.
Interpret body language, spot lies, gather motives. So no, actually.
I'm assuming that's social. That's social, isn't it? It's not mental. So.
Yeah, it's not mental. So focus, inspect, analyze, remember. Okay, yeah, focus.
I've only got the one. Well, I'll chuckle one dice on it because why not?
Yeah.
6.
Okay. I mean, you're not an expert. You've picked up a few things in your time with Candela Obscura. Probably hit the books almost as much as Dr. King has. And this isn't a summoning circle. It is more of a binding sort of circle. Made to contain something that is already here.
Well, I will, as you suggest, I will definitely take a picture for documentation purposes. But okay, that's an interesting. So it's a binding circle.
Yeah, and the lines aren't drawn on the floorboards; they're kind of burnt into it.
Okay, and that is that bind in the sense of trap it inside, or bind in the sense of control?
Trap, presumably for negotiation of some kind with whatever entity it is. Of course, it might just be rich boys dabbling, or who knows.
Yes. Okay, well, I'll relay this. Okay. Is there anything else in the room of note?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Right. Well, what do you think, Daisy? I think we've probably finished here, aren't we? If there's nothing else to explore, we should probably get back and find the two wise old men and see what they make of this.
Okay. Well, yeah, you can catch up with them at the university since it's close by. They're probably arguing over some matter of grammar for the letter that they're writing when you pitch up.
Are they there?
Yes.
They're on mute. I'm waiting for them to respond. Are the players there?
Well, let me see.
Yes, they are, or at least one of them.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have news. It appears the mansion is up for sale, and thereby has been stripped and is deserted. However, we did find up in the upstairs study, this reveals a circle burned into the floor. What do you make of this, Doctor?
I mean, King is not an occultist. I suppose his learning would possibly extend to whatever, being able to read whatever the equivalent of sort of ancient languages, Greek, Hebrew, that sort of thing. So if there's any
Yeah.
kind of, if there's any this world equivalent of that, and he can make sense of that, I suppose that's probably the closest he can get to.
Yes. Make a focus roll to see if you can glean anything from the mundane aspects of this.
Okay, so this seems relevant enough to spend a point for intuition as well to give me 3 dice, 1 gilded. Okay, and it's a 6, but the gilded was a 3, which I think is an outright fail, so I don't get my
Yeah,
point
that
back.
would be a failure. Yeah.
So my intuition drops to 2. Okay, let me just carry on.
Okay, so some of the runes and so on here are familiar from the sort of old Fairlands era. Yeah, their interpretation, their meaning can be taken several different ways, but it seems to be a sort of general purpose abjuration sort of circle meant to keep whatever is inside from committing any wickedness or escaping or any of that sort of thing.
And the photograph shows that this was incised onto the floor. Is that right?
But burnt into it.
That's right.
It reminds you of some of the work you've seen by some of the students in the art department, where they're using heated electrical wires to burn patterns into wood.
Oh, gods, what next? Urinals as pieces of art? Okay. And does it... this might be too difficult a question to infer from a photograph. Does it imply, that there are sometimes people just copy stuff that they see in a book, and there's sometimes a slight subtle difference between that and somebody who actually understands what they're doing? Can that be inferred from the script?
Yeah. And if Brynmore was around, he could confirm it for you. Yes, this is the dabbling of an amateur who doesn't really know what they're doing. They're just sort of copying what they've seen, as if magic were engineering rather than an art.
And the context in which this was discovered, Miss Warren, Mr. Cushway, this was where exactly?
This was burnt into the floor of an upstairs study in the Hardwood mansion.
Ah, so not a servant's quarters then, not a public area.
No, it was hidden under a rug as well. They had the obviously the sense to hide it.
Is there like a kind of a who's who equivalent?
Would that be contemporaneous if that was our own world? Who's who? The oldest listing of prominent British people since 1849. So, yes. People who have died since 1897 are listed in Who Was Who. Apparently.
So,
yes, you can avail yourself of the current collected edition of New Fair's Who's Who from the University Library.
What we want to do, therefore, is find out as much as his detail is publicly available about Mr. Warren Hardwood, his education, his background, did he travel, etc., etc. Where is he likely to have picked this up? Any indication of where he could have picked this up?
Okay, so Warren Hardwood is the son of Ewan Hardwood, who was the famous philanthropist who did so much good works and turned his business into a bit of a charity. His grandfather was Reuben Hardwood, who was a famous industrialist. He invented the dividing Charlotte and the raveling Nancy. Machines used in rope making. The family has generally been involved in technological enterprise ever since, but it was Reuben who was the genius, and the Hardwood's sort of lead on technology has been eroded over the years. Warren is third generation rich. It was Reuben that came from Nout. And Warren is rich and spoiled. He had his education here at Briarwood College, and it was only through dint of the wealth of his family that he, left with any sort of education at all, really. The college records, which you have access to, describe him as a distracted student who would much rather spend time, down in the poor areas drinking than engaged in his studies. That he was disruptive, problematic, and that it was only worth keeping him on because the money that his family kept donating, helped the university thrive and expand. However, in the Who's Who, maybe they do some research for the new edition here, because there is some paper tucked into his page, which notes his finished construction of a new factory out in the Steel District and his moving of address to the same site quite recently.
Okay. And although Dr. King profoundly disapproves, in my day, undergraduate publications were strictly limited to the proper academic pursuits. But I understand there is a certain tradition of publishing what one might say are scandalous accounts of undergraduate life, which I take it the colleges are foolish enough to keep a record of. But it now happens to suit our purposes. So I'll just check those just to see if there's any sort of gossip, frankly, about him amongst his contemporaries, rather than from the university authorities' point of view.
For the period, a party animal, drink, drugs.
Mr. Hardwood lost a substantial sum of money at the gaming table, etc.
Yes, that sort of things. Yeah, barely disguised things that he's been up to. The most scandalous thing was he apparently got one of the university staff pregnant, but that was kind of hushed up and covered over. And it's all implied, but your practiced academic eye can read between the lines.
I see Mr. Devereaux has returned to the land of the semi-living, so he might want to venture his opinion on this occult sigil if there's more to be gleaned from it.
Could you just very briefly describe what happened? Sorry, I was away from...
Yeah, that's all right.
So, thank you for joining us, Mr. Devereaux. So, we explored the Hardwood Mansion. It's been stripped of assets and is up for sale. However, we did find in an upstairs study, hidden under a carpet, this occult sigil burned into the floor, which so far we've determined it seems to be for binding purposes. We're hoping you can tell us more about it. Shows you photograph.
Okay, is this a sigil that I recognise?
So we got some information on it that it is some sort of binding imprisonment circle in the old Fairlands runic style. But if you want to find out more, can you make a focus roll, please?
Yes, it's gilded as well. So I got a 3 on the gilded die, which is a fail, isn't it?
Which is a fail, but you don't have to take the gilded die. Did you get anything on the other?
Better than the one that I got on the other one. So,
all right, so it's still a failure. I
guess I don't like to bind things. I like to summon them and let
Just
them.
summon them and let them run free.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to interpret that die roll.
It's not one that I'm familiar with, that particular rule, I guess.
Yeah, but the people who aren't occultists did figure out kind of what it was, at least in the general area. Your knowledge on the specific.
It does seem odd that they would leave that there with the house
Yeah.
fail.
Yeah, you concur with the others, but you can't offer any additional insight into what it means or what it does.
Okay, so I mean, if they've worked it out, I'll just pretend to agree with them. Like I know what they're talking about, even though I haven't got a clue.
That's
So
like
now I do, because they've come up with it. So
yes, that's like 90% of the occult anyway. Just pretending to understanding. All right, so we normally take a break about halfway through the game. This may be halfway through the game, or a bit less left. So I take it you're going to follow up by visiting the factory / new house next. Would that be right?
I think things are pointing in that direction, aren't they?
All right. Let's take a 10-minute break there. We will, or do you want longer? 10 or 15?
10's fine with me.
All right. Let's take 10 minutes then. And we'll see you, everyone who's watching, in about 10 minutes. Ta-ta. Right. I will remove everyone. Just make sure you're muted. And we'll see everyone after the break.
a race. And always in a race. And not for blowing games, they've got a new type minutes. Always in a race. And always in a race. And not for blowing games, they've got a new type minutes. Always in a race. And always in a race. And not for blowing games, they've got a new type minutes.
And we're hopefully back.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
What? Yes.
Quite. So there don't seem to be any rules for rest, but except between assignments. So I'm just going to arbitrarily say you can have a point back in each of your pools if you've spent any for a night's rest.
Okay, so back up to 3.
All right. You've all either not got proper jobs or have got jobs where you can abscond. So no problem there. So the next morning, at a reasonable hour, of course, after breakfast, you're able to make your way out along one of the newest cable car lines to the Steel, which is a new industrial area at the outskirts of the city, being built over and through a lot of stuff that was damaged in the war. So there's a lot of new construction, a lot of older factories that remain in the sort of inner parts of the Steel, and then further out, which is where you're going, is the newer construction. And duly following the directions in the wake of the letter you had couriered late last night, you arrive outside the hardwood compound. And compound is what it is, really. There is a brand spanking new factory, which looks like it only opened fairly recently. It does have high walls made of stone. The style of the factory and its surrounds is much more modern and Art Deco. And a spider web of electric cables runs into the factory from all directions. While there is space for a gate, there is no actual gate there. It's open. People can just wander in and out. And that seems to be what quite a lot of the workers are doing, wandering in and out, either returning from chores or breakfasting outside, or heading out to do the same from different shifts. Through the gate, you can see a sculpted landscape of regular shapes and clean lines, though the grass hasn't really had time to grow in yet, and all the trees look fairly young. Give it a decade or so, and the grounds will look really nice. The factory is as much built for art as for function, and there are no massive unsightly chimneys sticking out of it, just this web of cabling running in from all directions. There are also several smaller buildings around the outside, presumably for the workers to live in, eat in, stay in, do all of those sorts of things. There's an athletics track running around part of the sort of park that the factory is built in, tennis courts, which are in use, all of that sort of thing. It's not quite the hellish industrial landscape you were perhaps expecting.
No, it's just another sort of hell, though, isn't it? I always thought Port Sunlight must have been an absolute fucking nightmare to live in. But
Do any of the other workers have similar or matching outfits to?
Yes, I think there's differences between the sexes, but they all wear quite modest-looking clothing. The men have long jackets, single-breasted buttons with the same H on them. Pretty much everyone seems to have the same haircut within one gender or the other, and all points in between, of course. Yeah, it's a bit unnerving in a way. Everyone seems happy. It's weird, slightly alien, slightly unsettling.
King surveys this brave new world.
One of the gentleman workers on his way in, carrying a bag of various items under his arm, stops beside you. Are you lost, lady, gentleman?
Now, which one of you as group members thinks that Dr. King is going to be the first one to leap into that conversation?
Ma'am, sir, can I help you?
Sorry, who are we looking for again in this place? Good name.
A brief bit of retconning, I would suggest, if we've had time to discuss it, given what we saw on our approach, we'd want to adopt more or less the same approach we were going to at the house. We've got Mr. Cushway and Miss Warren would be trying to mingle amongst the workers, whilst Devereux and myself head towards. I think you said that there was I don't think you said so, but I think it was mentioned in the kind of society newspaper clippings that he'd actually built a residence within the grounds here as well, right?
Yes. It appeared so that he had a residence here. Yeah.
Good day, my man. My esteemed colleagues here are looking for the residence of the Hardwood family on these grounds. Perhaps you could be good enough to give us directions.
Oh, Mr. Hardwood. He lives in the main building, up at the tippy top there. There's elevators inside. If you go in the front entrance rather than the workers' entrance, you should be able to find him there.
Thank you. Godspeed, gentlemen. I'll turn back to the worker. So how is life treating you here in the factory?
Oh, it's wonderful. I've had some other jobs that were less than wonderful, but no, it's nice here. Mr. Hardwood looks after us all. Yeah, it keeps us fit and healthy, keeps us fed, puts a roof over our heads. It's amazing.
And how are the supervisors? Are they particularly cruel or demanding?
No, I mean they bunk with the rest of us pretty much. It's quite egalitarian, apart from Mr. Hardwood himself, of course.
Of course. And what is the work? Is any new innovations? Any new machines on the line?
Oh, so many. It seems like there's a new machine every week that we've all got to learn, but each one seems to make things easier. There's all this old mechanical machinery that Mr. Hardwood's done away with. Really, it's all electrical now.
Oh, what a brave new world we live in. Well, good to meet you, sir, and thank you for the directions.
Yeah. Anyone's free to look around the grounds, but if you need anything else, just ask anyone, really.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I'll let him to go and then turn back to the group. Do we all want to stay together on this one, or shall we, as you suggest, go our separate ways?
And the trouble is, my brain cannot get out of our Edwardian sensibilities, and so I'm just going to naturally assume that there's a sort of more or less a strict class hierarchy going on here. So yeah, I speaking for myself, I would suggest that myself and Mr. Devereux go to the house, and Mr. Cushway and Miss Warren inspect the workers.
Very good. We've just the two of us just investigated the house, which proved to be abandoned. Yes, let's proceed with that original plan. Good luck, gentlemen. We'll speak to a few other workers, like I've just spoke to that fellow there, and see if we can confirm his story.
Okay, so this time round, I will start with Dr. King and Brynmore, as you two had the solo bit first. All right, So you two head towards the front entrance to the factory. The factory is very tall, monolithic almost, in a very, very modern Art Deco style. There are a stylized statue of the mother from the Ascendancy religion over the entrance. The entrance is made up of big glass revolving doors, which you're able to pass through. It's almost like a greenhouse just inside due to all the glass from the windows and the doors. It's rather warm, in fact, even though the world outside is chilling slowly. There's a slightly unnatural coldness seeping into the world outside over recent years. But in here, it's warm. And there are many big, bushy, exotic potted plants around in various stands and so on, all again in this very kind of sleek Art Deco style. There are several rather bored-looking people at reception desks chatting to each other, and beyond them are elevators.
Okay, so I guess we go up to the reception. Seems an odd thing to have in your house, but okay.
The workers there seem somewhat surprised to see you. A young woman in the middle gets up. She's wearing the same uniform as everyone outside, but unlike the rest of them, she's wearing makeup and seems a little bit more groomed than the workers outside. Good morning, gentlemen. Do you have an appointment?
Regretfully not. We were somewhat taken by surprise to learn that Mr. Hardwood had relocated here from his family estate. And so you must forgive us the discourtesy of not calling ahead to notify us of our arrival. But we were hoping perhaps to have an audience. Of course, we understand Mr. Hardwood is a very busy man. The chances of him being able to see us, I'm sure, are very remote. But on the off chance, you might tell him that Dr. King from the university is here with a colleague, Mr. Devereux, bringing him an opportunity to continue his family's long and revered legacy of altruism and philanthropy.
Very well. If you'll just wait here, maybe take a seat on the couch. We have some literature there you might want to look through. I'll call up to Mr. Hardwood and see if he can see you.
Dr. King doubts in the extreme that they have literature.
What they have is sort of tabloid size printed papers. One of them is sort of internal news for the workers in the factory, and the other one is basically, quotations from various Hardwoods writing over the years, extolling the virtues of various things, including avoiding meat, the wonders of electrification. Yeah.
Well, I've just discovered that, of course, that the true horror of this dimension is that nobody's invented the Reader's Digest yet.
Yes. Right. The young lady speaks into some device that she brings out from under the desk, and listens intently to the earpiece, and speaks more in hushed tones underneath it, and then waves you over. You're lucky because he's moved so recently, just in the last couple of weeks, though the factory's been operational longer, of course. He doesn't have any other callers at the moment, and we did get your letter this morning. So, please step into the elevator.
And at this, King does what he always does when he's confronted with the modern, and just sort of looks at it spuriously. Is it one of those ones where the elevators are continuously moving, like on a sort of chain? So you have to step on them while they're moving.
Yes, it is. There are three separate elevator shafts, and they're all constantly moving.
After you, Mr. Devereux.
Certainly. If I must.
Right, you're not going to do yourselves a mischief. I'm not going to make you roll to get onto an elevator, but it is slightly disconcerting to have to hop onto it. It passes up. You get a brief glimpse of the factory floor at the lowest level, then at the upper level. The lower level seems to be where people are kind of cutting and coiling and that sort of thing. The upper level seems to be where all the actual machinery exists, kind of suspended over the lower level. A level above that is where materials are constantly being fed into the machines. Then there's a sort of big, open, vaulted upper space, almost like a cathedral. And then finally above that, and there doesn't weirdly seem to be any particular additional security, you arrive at what is presumably Mr. Hardwood's floor. This looks far cozier. There's a sort of reception room area with tall, narrow glass windows along each side. A couple of Chesterfield couches, some more plants. He seems fond of his plants. A couple of hat and coat racks, and beyond that, some green leather padded doors.
On the elevator on the way up, Dr. King will be filling his pipe.
You can faintly hear music playing from behind the doors.
And once we get into this vestibule, he will light it.
I'm sure I couldn't tempt you with a cigarette.
Oh, if pushed to it, if really, but no, I find them too harsh. This, on the other hand, is altogether superior. It's called Perique, you understand. That was the name of the rum-soaked shag that I couldn't remember. It's called a rum-soaked shag called Perique.
The smoke drifts across the room to the doors opposite.
Mm-hmm. All right. Indiscriminately, or towards one more particular, or is it just to?
It's just towards the door, like it's questing out, looking for something.
Be wary, Mr. Devereaux.
Wary of what exactly?
For all the hideousness of the modern age that our eyes are assailed by, there is something altogether different beyond that door. More in your line, you might say.
I see.
And being a well-bred antebellum gentleman, I'm not going to go and knock on the man's door. I'm going to stand here and wait for somebody to come and open it, I suppose. I don't know, unless Mr. Devereaux has another plan.
Yeah, you stand there for a while. Is Mr. Devereaux doing something?
No, I'm going to stand with you. I'm well out of my element here. This is more posh than I've had to deal with.
There is a buzzing sound, and the doors open themselves. The music, the gramophone scratches and stops abruptly, and you recognize Hardwood's voice coming from inside. Ah, come in, come in, come in, come in.
Do so.
All right, you pass in. This seems to be once been intended to be a sort of general lounge, sort of central area to his apartment. There are various doors leading off either side. The whole room mirrors itself on each side. But this room is mostly couches. There's an enormous radio set off to one side with the gramophone balancing on top of it. But most of the original furniture, like the kind of living room lounge furniture, has been pushed to the sides, and there are arrays of chalkboards and rolls of paper, drafting boards, things like that everywhere. There are plans and designs and other things sort of scattered all around the room, like every corner there's something, or some scribbled note, or some sketch on a napkin stuffed here or there. It's just completely festooned with ideas everywhere. And Mr. Hardwood looks a bit slightly frantic, almost. He's not properly dressed. His shirt is untucked and his braces are hanging by his sides. He snatches up a tumbler of some drink or other, takes a sip, and walks over, thrusting his hand out to shake Dr. King's hand.
Given his state of dishablement, King looks at the hand as if it's kind of vaguely a poisonous serpent for a second or two before recovering his civility, and extends it. Mr. Hardwood, a very great pleasure. Please forgive us for intruding on your time.
Dr. King, it's been some time. His hand is a bit sort of clammy, sweaty. And he looks, now you got a closer look at him, he looks a bit peaky, like bags under his eyes. He shakes your hand vigorously and then throws his tumbler into your crotch. Just the contents. Splash! There! Now we're even!
Stunned. Utterly.
I'm laughing
who's your-
as well as out of character.
Right. And who's your friend here?
Still brushing himself down with his lavender handkerchief. Yes, this is Mr. Devereaux, a sometime manuscript and book dealer, forayer into the more obscure side of the scientific revolution, you might say.
Ah, fascinating. Well, pleased to meet you. He extends his hand to Devereaux.
I'll shake his hand with a sort of crushing grip.
Yeah, he grips back, doing the manly hand crush to each other. But yeah, he's a bit clammy and sweaty. You think if you squeeze too hard, his hand would slip out like wet soap. Please, there's a couch somewhere here under those papers, I think. You don't mind if I keep working while you talk, do you?
Well, Mr. Hardwood, to be candid, I was rather hoping to intrude on your time somewhat more than being the background artiste, as we might say.
Well, spit it out, man. He goes up to one of the chalkboards and wipes it off with his sleeve and starts scribbling on it.
If he's content to do that for a second or two, I will take the opportunity to look at this stuff. I mean, if it's engineering related, it's going to be like me looking at the Key of Solomon. It's not going to make any sense, but
Yeah.
I will just see if it's the case.
Like a dog that's been shown a card trick.
Yes, quite so. So I guess that's what, survey? Or survey? Survey, focus?
Analyze is more focus, so focus, I
Right,
think.
focus. Okay, fair enough. I don't think this is going to be hugely crucial, so I'm not going to spend a point. So I'm going to turn 2 dice, 1 gilded. So it's a 6 on the non-gilded. So, but I didn't spend anything, so it doesn't matter. So yeah.
Okay.
Now, all it might tell
So-
me is that it's mechanical engineering drawings.
Well, yes, for you, all you see are mechanical engineering drawings, and a lot of it in some peculiar set of glyphs that you can't decipher, but which you don't think are occult, but you're not sure what they are. Maybe he's come up with some code of his own or something. Brynmore can make the same roll, though, but he would pick up different things from what he sees. So if Brynmore wants to make a focus roll as well to analyze the surroundings. Simon?
Focus roll, sorry.
Yes. That's all right.
Sorry, I'm running on very little sleep, so I'm starting to
That's
drift
fine.
off with being this late. Wait, focus. Oh, it's gilded. Not that that matters because the gilded dice was 1. I got 5 on the other dice, so
Okay, so success with some drawback. Okay, you look around. You don't understand any better than Dr. King what exactly all these glyphs and things mean. They're not any occult designs that you recall, but the way in which a lot of them are configured, the way in which these diagrams are laid out, does remind you of certain occult patterns used to summon, define, and shape spiritual energy.
okay. Sorry, the gentleman's working while we're talking.
Yeah, he's scribbling away on a chalkboard.
Okay.
But
This-
let's spit it out. What are you here for?
well, actually, it appears to be connected with what you're doing. We're fundraising for a new department at the university regarding the occult, which, fortunately, it seems you are knowledgeable about.
His chalk snaps in half when when you say that, and he stops and turns. Occult? No, this is so occult means secret, doesn't it? I suppose in a way. This is electrical engineering. Yeah, new applications of this. So many people are scared of electricity since the end of the war, but I see nothing but endless possibilities. I never used to think like my grandfather with his machines and devices and so on, steam engines and water-powered wheels, and does nothing for me. But electricity, that's the future. So I can see how you'd get that impression, and I suppose these things seem odd to some people, but it's engineering.
Right, but it does bear a striking resemblance to some of what may be perceived as the mystical art.
I suppose chemistry was once alchemy. Perhaps there is some primal partner to electrical science in the deep past. I hear they dug up a primitive battery recently abroad somewhere.
Oh yeah.
So
I wonder, would you be willing to share what these drawings do?
well, I'm still waiting on patents, so I'd probably best not. Industrial secrets and whatnot.
Quite. I mean, this
But
appears to be some form of summoning thing that you've got here.
well, I can assure you, it isn't. No, these are designs for devices that channel and use electricity in new ways. I think I've cracked a design for a brushless motor. Oh, I said too much.
I see. And I'll just turn to. I'll let you get on with your work. One moment. I'll just need to speak with my colleague to explain the difference between what you're doing and what we're doing.
Of course.
This is more of my domain and your domain. So whereas my colleague here is obviously an academic from the university. So give me a couple of moments. I'll just explain things to him.
Of course. And then I want to know what you're here for. There's no point dancing around. Just get to the point.
Okay. Well, give me a moment. I'll just explain to my colleague, and we'll be right back with you. And I'll turn to Dr. King and say quietly, this man is either deranged or lying. He believes he is making, well, he says that he's making some of these newfangled electrical contraptions, but these drawings are quite clearly some form of summoning ritual.
I confess it's all of a piece to me, I'm afraid, Mr. Devereux.
Oh,
Be
this
hard.
would bring about otherworldly creature, probably such as the one which killed the young lady that we're investigating. But he claims it to be an electrical device. He mentioned a brushless motor.
At this, Dr. King just looks at you as if you've just sort of said, bibble, bibble, bibble.
Yeah, I don't know what brushless motor is either. Some kind of electrical device. Certainly not what this is, though.
Let us perhaps see if we can't draw him around to ground that we find more interesting.
Perhaps you should do the talking. See if you can solicit a donation from him anyway. Certainly, if we can come to the university with a substantial sum of money that's been donated to open an occult sciences department, I would be happy to lecture in such a department with an honorary professorship.
Yes, well, that's obviously something that would have to be considered by the Senate. Mr. Hardwood, you'll have to forgive me. And then he looks down at the wet spot on his trousers. As in fact, I know you recall at our last meeting. You may have been given to understand that in my line, I'm more in the way of an historian, an art historian to be precise. These hand waving at the drawings, these are quite beyond my remit or expertise. On the question of electricity, I seem to remember that electricity certainly played a very major, not to say terminal role in a great many young men during the war. But be that as it may, you may depend upon it, sir, that Mr. Devereux here is a foremost expert in his field, and our proposal to you is to fund the publication of a catalogue of substantial antiquarian occult texts held within the university's libraries, and to acquire them from elsewhere. And this obviously is where our humble supplication today features. I confess, I play upon your family's reputation for philanthropy.
Quite, and I feel that I'm maturing to that as well, in the same way that my father and grandfather did. You've seen the grounds?
Yes.
I believe you get the best work from people when you encourage their best selves to come forth. When you strip them of all these things that make people fight and squabble. When everyone has plenty, you have harmony. Wouldn't you agree? Anyway, yeah, I would be happy to sponsor. Just get a detailed proposal, just as a formality, and I'll sign a check over to the university. I feel that I owe them after everything I got up to when I was there. I wish I'd valued knowledge and education then as much as I do now. He pats himself down and takes out a hip flask and takes a quick swig from it.
Yes, well, it is. I am told it is never too late. The merest hint of a raise of his eyebrow suggesting that in this particular case that might not be a truism. But my colleague here raises an interesting point while we're on the subject of a comparison between what one might call ancient occult and spiritual practices and the modern, shall we say, miracles of science and engineering. And speaking to you and Mr. Devereux here, it makes me wonder whether there might not be some value in a project which looks to explore the relationship between ancient and, in some cases, forbidden magic and the scientific method. Do you think that would be profitable, Mr. Hardwood?
Can you make a sway roll, please?
Okay, so sway would be 2. It's ungilded, but I'm going to spend... This seems quite important to get a reaction out of him here, so I'm going to spend 2 from my cunning pool. So I'm rolling 4 dice, yes? Okay, so top is a 5, so I'll take that.
Okay. See, he drifts his attention away from the chalkboard again and sort of stares right at you. Takes another swig from his hip flask, and you can almost see his pupils shrinking down to little points after he takes his swig. That would be a fascinating project indeed, Dr. King, Mr. Devereaux. His demeanor changes, becomes a little bit more cold, calculating, curious. He marches over to his desk that's been shoved over to one side, extracts an enormous decorated checkbook, and in quick, florid hand writes a fairly large number, and it comes over to you. Put a proposal together using this, and get me the reports on what it was you wanted to raise money for, and more of that will come. I really must get back to work.
Oh, that's marvelous news, Mr. Hardwood. Marvelous, marvelous. I look forward to the day when we can lay the foundation stones for the Hardwood Library of Occult Sciences.
Well, now that we're even on the crotch wetting front, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, Dr. King, Mr. Devereaux.
And I actually, King forgets to take the check, even though it's proffered. He actually turns around and starts walking out, leaving the check.
He turns and hands it to Mr. Devereaux.
I'll take it and say, thank you very much for your generosity, sir.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Quite welcome. Spend whatever time you wish to on the grounds. Take in the place. See what I've done.
Gladly, I'll take a look around. Dr. King, shall we make our way?
By all
All
means,
right.
Mr. Devereaux.
Meanwhile, and I am conscious of the time, so let us try and speed up a little bit. But meanwhile, you other two, you've been talking to the plebs. Is there anything in particular you wanted to examine, talk to anyone about, investigate, ask about?
I just wanted to try to find somebody that was maybe worked in the same department
That she'd been working in.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, that's why I was asking about the jackets, the clothing. If they had different colors for different departments, so we could identify.
Yeah, they have different embroidered H's for different departments, so you're able to find some people who work where she worked. So presumably Edwin's going along with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much like I did with that one MC, just get a general feel for the mood of the place, the vibe, how I think
everyone is chill and happy, possibly too happy. Can you make a sense roll, I suppose? Attune, channel, reveal. Yeah, reveal. There we
go. Sense. No. Fail.
No. Fail. Okay, never mind then. But you do, between you, find other people who worked in her department, and they're perfectly happy to show you what they do. Yeah. You head into the factory. It's weirdly quiet. You've probably both been around other factories, and they can be deafening from all the machinery going off. But the electrical machinery running in here seems a lot quieter, cleaner. There's not much smoke in the air. It smells slightly dusty from all the fibers from the rope and so on, but everyone seems happy. They're working hard. You don't see anyone get dragged into any machines or anything while you're here. There's no child workers either. They sing songs as they work. It's all rather weirdly kind of hypnotic. It's like the people are parts of the machine working in concert and in time with it. And then when they step back from the machines, it's like they come back into themselves and become human again.
Do we see any signs of like the symbol that we found in the house, or any sort of, just like carved anywhere or anything like that?
There are no occult sigils. There is some religious iconography, mostly of the Mother and various prayers from the Ascendancy Church, scribed on the walls, generally ones to do with, working hard, that sort of thing.
Okay. So let's see, you said that she just died, and there weren't, can we ask around some of the people if they knew her?
Yes. You find people who work next to her in line on this particular machine. Someone's taken her place since, though, obviously.
Supposed to be my job.
Taking her gerbs. But yeah, they all speak fondly of her. Oh, Millie, yeah, she was a lovely girl, hard worker, fit in well. And I understand she had a bit of a hard life at home and so on, but she was glad to be here, and she's sent some of her pay out to her family.
So she lived here on campus?
Oh, everyone lives here on campus.
What would have happened to her stuff, once she passed?
Well, she left. We don't know what happened to her outside. I think her things are still in her locker. I think they'll be cleared out at the end of the week.
Should we try to take a look at that, Edwin?
I suppose so, but I'm concerned that lockers are generally in fairly public places. A lot of people coming and going, and incorporating into a locker would not be well received. By the sound of it, I'm not expecting too much that would find there. Curious place, isn't it? They all seem almost seems a bit too happy.
But she must have left for a reason. We may find it amongst her items.
Well, I mean, perhaps she merely left to go and visit her family. I'm sure her mother wants to see her now and again. After the fact that she left items here, that implies that she was not leaving for good. She was simply popping out briefly. Well, but before we take so we say action which could turn messy, shall we wait for others to get back and see what they've uncovered?
Okay. Yeah, so you can go and wait in the grounds for the others to return. So you see them exit the bottom of the front of the factory and come out, and you're able to come back together near some of the sculpted grounds. You can hear people chatting and the thwack thwack of tennis being played.
If we can venture to some ghastly piece of modern sculpture away from the main thoroughfares, and I just have in my head this kind of vision of incredibly unpleasant sort of Mussolini period grandiosity. And King will look up to the kind of penthouse. Up there, gentlemen, is a man with a third-class mind, inhibited by excess of alcohol, who seems, at least on the surface, to be capable of, how shall I put it, breadth of thought and vision that he has not come by through honest labor.
Is that a polite way of saying he's a madman who has gained knowledge through the occult?
I don't venture an opinion on his sanity. Perhaps it would be more comforting if he was insane.
Brushes with the occult do tend to leave their mark on people.
Well, we've spoken with the workers, and they all seem very, very happy here. This is almost, some idyllic utopia of factory. The girl left items behind. Not that we've seen them yet, so that would imply to us that she wasn't leaving for good. She was merely popping out, on some errand, perhaps to see her family.
Point of world building. Since we all are sort of kind of familiar with the occult to a greater or lesser degree, or the realities of it, there is, of course, a trope in real world demonology that you can summon demons to discover secrets. Is that something that would be in our thinking in this particular world?
Yeah, so there are demons that hold sway over particular spheres of knowledge, or that can grant certain gifts. Other supernatural creatures as well. Striking a bargain with evil is very much a thing.
Yeah. I put it to you that... sorry, go ahead.
I was just speculating. Is it possible that something has been done to render these workers, happy, hard-working, and compliant? They seem almost to be sleepwalking in their work, or under some form of mesmerism. I mean, if we look for mundane explanations, I might suggest someone would put something in their food, perhaps. But given our learning, perhaps it's also possible that something has been done to sway their minds. It seems rare to not find at least some dissenting worker who's unhappy about something. Workers can always want better conditions and more pay, or can be annoyed with a petty line supervisor who's deep in their power and abusing it for their own self-esteem. The fact that we have not found any of that implies something is not right here.
I defer to you, Mr. Cushway, on the sociology of the working classes. If you believe that, in your experience, this is something that is implausible or unnatural, it is something we should be aware of.
It seems remarkable. I would venture that far.
Right. Well,
Almost.
I'm going to nudge you as time is pressing to go and investigate the locker.
Okay. Well, if we're another other leads, we were pointed to the girl's locker, which we were told would be emptied at the end of the week. Okay, well, can we find out where it is? Is it in how public is the place? Is there people coming and going all the time, or?
So there are 3 housing blocks, one for men, one for women, one for married couples, including same-sex couples, of course. She was housed in the women's quarters. So, yeah, when you head over there, you are allowed in, but there's a little bit of kind of tutting at gentlemen going in, and you're warned to stay out of the bathroom area.
Right. Well, good luck, Daisy.
Yes, the lockers are adjacent to the bathing area, so Daisy will be allowed in at least.
I will say adieu and go to the lockers.
Okay. So, in big sites like this, you would expect the bathing area to be more of a big public area, provided everyone's of the same sex. But weirdly, everything is very hived off into sets of cubicles in here, and there seems to be room inside to change as well as to shower. You don't get a hint of anyone so much as like wrapped up in a towel or anything. Everyone's always dressed and in public, or if they're undressed, it's in private. It just strikes you as peculiar as you open up the locker. Yeah, she has a few things tucked away in there. Some old clothes, more like you would have expected her to wear instead of her worker's outfit. A little holy book of the Ascendancy, a very old-fashioned printed photograph of her family when she was quite a lot younger. There's also a few bloodied handkerchiefs stuffed in here under the clothes.
Okay. Well, I'll take those for sure. And the Bible. See if there's any, like, maybe a little secret compartment, or try to just feel around in it. See if I, find something.
Make a survey roll.
I think I have 2 in survey. Yeah, 2. 2 ones.
Okay, no.
Is there a way to re-roll?
If you've got resistance in that, then you can spend your resistance to reroll.
No, I don't have resistance. 0.
Okay. So as you're crouching and going through this, you fail to notice someone coming up behind you, and then you suddenly feel something dropped down the back of your shirt, and whatever it is begins to scuttle down your back.
Okay. I want to. I've got. Whenever you take more, you have 1 more. That's gonna help. I want to just try to throw myself straight back onto the ground, like, and squish whatever is there.
Okay. Now there aren't combat rules, but let's see. Make a strike roll.
Strike. So 2 gilded.
So this is what you're good at.
Yeah, exactly. Finally something. I had a 4 and a 2.
Okay, so 4 is success with a drawback. Okay. All right, you throw yourself backwards the moment you feel it. Something crunches wetly against your back, and you're suddenly flooded with negative, aggressive emotions. Yeah, people do their best to treat people from your tribe and so on as if they were as good as anyone else, but that behind their eyes they're thinking bad things, thinking you're primitive or low class, or job as an explorer. Oh, what kind of job is that? People have been all over the world. You can't just go there again and say every negative self-doubt, thought and anger and nasty emotion, every little bit of hatred you've ever suspected coming from anyone else seems to pour into you as this thing crunches under your back. But a couple of girls come in either side of you and start trying to wrestle you and hold you down.
Oh, I resist.
Make another strike roll, please.
Okay. 6 and a 4.
Okay, yeah, you throw one of them off you and push past the other one and back out. The moment it's obvious they're not going to be able to stop you, they just stop, and that beatific smile reappears over their face. And they just go back to what they were doing as you rush out. Okay, Daisy comes running out in what seems like a bit of a panic.
These people are crazy. I was going through the locker and they put some sort of creature in my back. Can y'all look and see, what's back there?
Yes, turn around, we'll have a look.
All right.
When Edwin speaks, you sort of look at him and you get that same negative rush of emotions. Posh little boy, not old enough to have seen action in the war, thinks he knows everything. He's probably studying you. And King, an academic, thinks he's up and above everything, thinks he can find everything in his books, never leaves. You've been out there, you've seen it. And Brynmore probably sees you as some kind of exotic. He hides his mouth behind that beard and those eyes. He wants to conquer you.
It's kind of accurate.
I start to back away from him.
Well, if you want to try and resist that, make a focus roll. I think it's probably the best.
Focus. No, I don't have any points in that. Right? So. 2.
Okay, so a failure. If you want to shake off the effects anyway, you can do it, but at the cost of taking a mental mark.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You concentrate hard. This is coming from this thing that they tried to get you with. You clutch your head. A headache builds. Blood trickles from your nostril. But you manage to shake off the effects. But you're also left with an impression of something bigger, darker, nastier lurking beneath the factory. You sort of fed back on some of this kind of psychic energy between you and this thing they put down your back.
Well, as I'm kind of fighting it off, I'd like to try to, untuck my shirt and stuff and see if, get whatever it is that, fall out.
A crushed bug, like a burst tick the size of your fist, falls out of the back of Daisy's shirt and hits the ground, oozing a black ichor from its back. And it's got a little bit of blood around its mouth parts. Most of its legs are crushed, a couple torn off, one still twitching slightly.
Oh, looks nasty. We better get that wound cleaned out. Might have left a bit inside.
If so, am I back in a mental state that I'll let them come close to me again, or
Yeah, you've shaken off the effects, but you are aware of this thing lurking beneath the factory, and you're aware of more of these things, sort of looking around everyone except your friends. You can sense one of these things attached to them somewhere.
Can I do a quick read roll to just take in the emotional range you've just gone through?
Yes, you can.
No, I failed. Oh, never mind.
Yeah,
No,
but
what's up? What's up there?
gentlemen, there's whatever this is that they attacked me with. It's the effects of it seem to have allowed me to sense them. There's definitely something here under the factory, and as a matter of fact, it seems to be infecting every person here.
But you'll forgive me if I observe that it seemed to have the opposite reaction in you to the rest of the workforce. You were most agitated. These people seem beatific by comparison.
Well, I was attacked by two girls when they used it on me, so maybe it amplified my current, my emotions at the time.
Or a
And
process.
these girls, these girls, I mean, when they saw I slammed one into the locker and the other one back, and as soon as they kind of saw that they couldn't take me, they weirdly went back to being happy and normal and just walked away.
Could I make a roll to see if this is something that I know about?
yes. Focus for memory.
No, it's not. 3.
Okay. Some kind of possession, but on a mass scale. But
Yeah.
you know nothing about the particulars.
I hold out the book and the stuff I did manage to get, and say that I did manage to get these out, but I wasn't able to search the locker for very long before this happened. So
You realize that all the conversation and laughter and so on around you seems to have slowly faded and stopped.
Shall we walk, ma'am,
Yes,
gentlemen?
Shall we run?
I hardly think that's fitting.
No, let's relocate in a dignified fashion for now, and plan our next steps.
Miss Warren, if it isn't an intrusion, exactly what did you as I say, I observed for myself your state of agitation. What exactly was the cause of this? By which I mean the emotional cause.
Well, I was searching the locker, and then I felt them put that bug or something down my shirt, and I immediately acted and threw myself to the ground and crushed it. And then the people attacked, and all I could see was that they looked at me like I was nothing, that I was below them. And so I reacted violently back.
You feel something pulling at the edge of Daisy's mind, calling her towards the factory.
You said it was below the factory. Do we know any way down to below the factory?
There were some steps down on the workers' floor.
Right. I'm concerned that if we go in there, we may be and confront it. We may be immediately massively outnumbered, and we're not particularly equipped. Does anyone have any good ideas?
I don't know, but something's drawing me back there.
The longer you leave it, the worse it'll be. And we're almost out of time. So go and confront the thing.
Okay.
It's a one shot. You can all die. It doesn't matter.
Fine. Okay. Quick as here.
I say we just walk in, make it look like we belong there. If you look like you know what you're doing, people often don't question you.
Everyone around you seems to have stopped, and they're all looking in your direction. But they don't seem to be making any moves to stop you or attack you. Or
I let the inner voice just start to guide me and see if it'll take me in the right direction.
Okay.
Daisy starts to walk towards the factory.
Follow, hypothesizing that this is a queen ant or queen bee scenario, and that the workers are the drones.
Very well. Yes. Okay. We'll follow along.
All right. So you pass into the factory. The machines are still chugging, but nobody's working on them. They just sort of turn and watch you walk through the factory. Find the stairs down. It's quite well lit down here, and you can hear a constant hum of electricity. There was a demonstration at the university of big electrical devices that can create artificial lightning. Reminds you of that. And down beneath the factory is a great chamber with a glass ball made of panels, with electrical cabling and wires running around it in patterns that Brimmore instantly recognizes as having been cribbed from various occult tomes. It's just they have power running through them. And squatting in the middle of this enormous glass dome is a great bloated tick with a spiderous front end to it about the size of a pony. It scratches its front mandibles against the glass and peers out at you malevolently.
I just pull my shotgun out and start taking shots at
it. Okay, that's instant. Anyone else?
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop him.
Okay.
I'll take the camera out, but ideally before he shoots and take a picture of it.
Okay. So the bright flash of light, and then the first shotgun blast goes off. Okay. Great masses of glass shatter and fall down in shards. You get this massively strong impression of absolute glee coming off the thing as the second shotgun blast goes off and ruptures the enormous sack on its back. A tide of black, foul, oily goo gushes out of the thing, washes over the whole floor and sprays down towards you. And out of the goo, hundreds, nay, thousands of smaller ticks scuttle off in all directions. The main thing seems dead, but Daisy still hears its voice in her head. Free. I'm free. You'll never be shot of us. You can suppress your hate, your urges. You can push them down, but they'll always be there, and will always be there to feed on them, to gift you progress from your hate and your pain and your disgust. We shall see you again, Miss Warren, and your friends.
I reload and take a couple shots at the electric machine, try to start a fire and kill as many of them as possible.
Yeah, I want to step on as many of these things as I can as they're scuttling away.
Yeah, you blast at them with your shotgun, stamp on them. They don't seem to bother trying to mount you and infest you.
Okay, I will attempt to. No, stop! Before he tries to cause an electrical outage when the room is we're standing in a room full of liquid, because that could be bad.
Well, we never find out quite what happens to our intrepid heroes as the shotgun roars again and massive batteries, arc electricity around the room. So the windows shatter and the people, suddenly bereft of their lotus-like poison, begin screaming and running outside. So the end.
Has Candela Obscura got like a paramilitary arm?
There is a heavily armed paramilitary police force. So after the war, they've been given a lot of the old military equipment. Basically, class issues and militarized police are about the only main conflict points.
Well, I was going to say, given this is a utopian setting with no racism and no religious conflict and no patriarchy, the things that feel hate must be really starving.
Well, okay, so
in the wrong world.
But we just released the bugs. Now there will be all those things. We fixed it.
So what I figured was, even with the best will in the world, people have prejudices and so on. And it was completely unrealistic that this world wouldn't have them, so that they're just repressed. And so the occult can be a way of feeding off that hidden hatred and prejudice and so on. And its gift obviously was progress. So maybe it was a bit on the nose, but I had to make this so I could have fun with it. So I did. What did you guys think of the game and the system?
We kept rapidly running into bugs in the system. Like, what do you roll to pick a lock? It's easy to just use brute force. Oh, okay. She said there is no combat system. It's invariably almost every roll is going to result in a mixed success, which is almost, it's like, well, yeah, why you bother rolling then? So that's the system, I guess. And in terms of the setting, again, I think I don't know what you gain by choosing this setting over just, say, a classic Call of Cthulhu setting. In terms of that world, the historical setting has more color to it. Has more. I like those fine, dirty, nuanced details about a setting. It's more believable. I don't know what else to say on that. It seems that I haven't seen the calculation system. I don't know if if it's class based. It always feels like it's class based because we've got roles which are kind of D&D classes.
Yeah, you've got roles and then you've got sub specializations within each. So, like Mr. Devereaux, within that you can be either an occultist or like a stage magician,
right?
And it goes on like that.
The abilities are sometimes hard to remember them. Like, I'm sure there was some cases where you should have applied my lie detectability, which is when you read someone gain extra dice. But again, I'm sure I missed that because I looked at my stats. I didn't think to check every time what my abilities do. And that also produces some perverse situations where you go, I want to roll lie detect on that conversation. Why? Because I've gilded extra dice. And I've got a good chance to get a wee bit of my pool, which again is not like it's not a healthy mechanic to have in a game.
So Beardy, there aren't really. You can have devices and things that can maybe soak a mark for you. So when you fail a roll in a situation where you might get hurt in some way, you take a mark, and there are some things that can absorb marks for you. There aren't really rules for weapons exactly. Maybe you can get an extra gilded die if you use a weapon, or you might get a bonus die, but there isn't really much in the way of guidelines or anything in there. They've got more detailed rules for kind of artifacts, which have a more concrete statistical and game system effect, but normal stuff, not really.
Is there any concept of opposed roles?
No.
So I have we have a read skill and a hide skill. I like the fact the social split of sway, read, and hide. That works better than say the word darkness.
Yeah.
I like that as a concept, but it feels like here. Okay, so I roll my read, and they should roll their hide, and we should somehow compare.
Yeah.
Like
no, I never roll for anything.
No, yeah. But what if it's player on player? Because a player might lie to another player, and I might try and read another player, and then might want to hide it.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any way to do that. The way I would bodge it would be whoever got the best roll, but it's not really built for that.
That's clear. The fact that two characters can never do any kind of opposed roll seems
And if I put you up against a creature, a monster, or a thug or whatever, you're still rolling the same dice, right? You're always rolling your strike or whatever else you're trying to do. It's never more difficult and it's never easier. I just have to wibbly wobbly decide, right? But yeah, anyone else got anything they want to say?
My only grievance with it is that you're almost always going to succeed on a roll. I quite like things where you have to interpret it. Like I don't think everything has to be set in stone. Use whatever is most sensible in the circumstances. But if you're always going to get at least a partial success, then what's the point in rolling?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm reminded of the Call of Cthulhu system, which is that's quite similar, but it's actually much more streamlined. And where you just roll 1, 2, or 3 dice as like one dice, extra one if it's your kind of class thing. 3 plus is a success on any dice. So that's it. You set the whole you need this character sheet for it, and that kind of achieves the same result.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Two things. One about the setting, one about the system. I struggled throughout that to try and remain faithful to what the book says it is, and yet because it is drawing so closely from particular historical eras and real world stuff, I found that difficult. If we were playing as somebody mentioned, if we were playing in a Call of Cthulhu game and you were quote unquote allowed, and I'm sure people will say, well, of course it's your game, you don't have to play whatever they say in the book. Okay, yeah, but the intention is clearly there, and it's just a weird thing to have a setting so close to a historical setting, which can be really interesting because it's not like our own, and then throw all that away by saying, actually, this is 2-dimensional, Mickey Mouse land or whatever.
Yeah, historical settings have that cultural touchstone that everyone understands certain things about them. So that's positive, but then you throw that out and you lose that solid ground.
Yeah, and yet we're stuck constantly. Like, for example, Mr. Cushway here actually used the word mesmerism. Well, that has no analog.
Mesmer is an actual person.
Well, exactly, right. So I became crushingly aware of almost any phrase you use for a kind of cultural shorthand. We were importing real world things, and that just led to a constant sort of grinding of gears. Yeah. On the system itself, yes, lots of things wrong with it. It should either be more complicated or simpler, one or the other. Yeah. Pick a lane. My issue.
I will. Sorry, go on.
Well, my issue with it, actually, funnily enough, is exactly the same as the issue with FFG Star Wars and those fucking narrative dice. If everybody round the table, and it's almost impossible, and it's certainly impossible for the GM to do it on his own. It's just exhausting to think up yes and no buts for every cocking roll, and and players can contribute, yeah, sure, but it puts everybody in a position of yet another layer of I have to think about this, I have to think about this, I have to think about this, and it's just tiring.
Yeah. Braden, anything you've got to add?
The lack of the combat thing is still, I just don't think I could get into that very well. I mean, without the dynamic, the big, not that it's got to be a D20 system, but even a 3D6 system or 2D, Modi's 2D20, whatever. At least like you get those exciting moments where maybe 1 second you fail, but then the next player crits, and it creates all this dynamic energy and stuff, and you just don't know what's going to happen. And with this, it's just like, okay, well, if we had gotten a fight with those thugs, well, how do I mean, it's like, well, how would we even resolve it? There's just no, I don't know. And then like, if you're like, if I was like, I picked the more fighter kind of class or what, the muscle. I mean, it seems like, like there's no way to gauge it. Like, I mean, okay, I can hit a human and it's going to be the same as hitting like a werewolf? Like how, or do you just set the difficult? I don't know. I don't know. There was And
okay,
having the same number of rolls for the same dice every time just seems like, I don't know. Yeah.
I'll just briefly give what I thought, then I will let you go and I will answer any questions from the chat. So from my point of view, like, I don't have to keep track of anything, which is good, but I'm constantly having to interpret things. The rules aren't there really to do any of the work for me, and they add work from the interpretations. Like, there's not always obviously necessarily a succeed with a drawback, and that coming up constantly is the most common result, probably. Made it very difficult because you want to play to the system, you want to add these complications to keep the game alive and vibrant and feel like you're challenging people, but there's often times when it doesn't apply. I suppose you can just ignore it, but that feels like cheating the system almost. There is no real way to change difficulties for anything. So there is no difference between you fighting a thug and fighting a werewolf as far as the system is concerned, other than the stakes would be higher fighting a werewolf, I suppose. And yeah, you're always rolling the same dice. There isn't much to differentiate one character from another. Like 2 is the maximum score for a starting character, and I think 3 is the maximum anyway. Then you have your pool points that you can add, but you're understandably gun shy about doing that, and you're only really meant to recover them, if I've read this right, between games. So that's a big problem. It's the same issue that a lot of these narrative games have. It's like they sell themselves as being simple and streamlined, but when you actually come to doing anything with them, they're not, because you're constantly having to think on the fly. And as a games master, you don't have the rules to hide behind. Like, if I want to be unfair, I have to personally be unfair to your character. You can't really get a particularly bad roll, and I don't feel like I can deny what you do with your character. And the system rewards you for finding Weasley ways to use your best abilities. Like, oh, we've come up against a lock, nobody has the lockpick skill. Normal game, well, that's it, you're fucked. Maybe break a window or something. But the way I described the door, you shouldn't have been able to bash it down. But if I said no, that would have been denying one of the few things that a muscle character has to do in this sort of game, and it would have been denying you that ability. So there was no game to hide behind. You couldn't rely on the dice falling where they may to add the challenge and so But yeah, it hasn't changed my opinion on the system, I don't think. Right, so if you guys want to go to bed, you can. I will answer a few questions from the chat, and then I will close out. And I'll probably do an after action report tomorrow over on my main channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all of that business.
Can I just add a point about the potential for combat? I mean, if you're literally just rolling strike, presumably,
Yeah.
if you hit, I mean, if you shoot something, it's dead.
Yeah.
All you're rolling is whether you hit it. If you hit it, it's dead. That seems fairly realistic. There's a slim chance you're going to fail. But if you're pointing a gun at something, you're probably going to hit it and kill it.
Yeah, and the same with stabbing things. But if you're up against creatures or something, there's no way for me to really scale the difficulty or to represent the difficulty.
They hit it, and you can describe that it takes an injury or something, and you could.
Yeah, but then that's arbitrary.
Yeah,
so
totally.
So yeah,
number of hit points you assign to a monster.
Yeah, there is no hit point mechanic except for players. Players
that's what I mean. Like you would decide like this monster's going to need to be hit X amount of times as the dungeon master, the games master. The player would then hit it, and you describe that it's taken some sort of damage. We'll assume like a 10-foot tall werewolf built like a tank.
Yeah, but it's so arbitrary that is a lot of stress to put on the games master. It's not handled by the system, so I have to make something up, which we often do in games. But there's usually more of a skeleton of rules that you can operate off.
So how does it work the other way? So if something hits us, does that mean we get a mark for that?
So you would attempt to do whatever you want to do in combat to it. Right. If you fail, then it's assumed that it's hurt you. So if you outright fail, it might have hurt you really badly. If you succeed with a drawback, maybe you trade blows, and then you will take a mark in physical combat. That would be a physical mark.
Oh,
every three physical marks, you get a scar. So after you failed 3 times, maybe it breaks your arm or something like that. So it is more detailed slightly when it comes to characters, but it does make them very survivable. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So all right. So you guys can go. You are released. I will answer any questions people have had.
Right. Thanks for the game, Greg.
You're welcome.
Yep. Thank you, gentlemen. Good to play with you.
See you next time.
I'll if nobody else will, I'll hang around if anybody has a question about playing it as opposed to running it.
Yeah, I'll watch for a bit. Yeah.
All right. So what are the actual rules for strike? It's the same as everything else. There is a school of thought that maybe we shouldn't devote so much of games to combat, and so this kind of does that by having basically the same system for everything, but that means everything is kind of shallow. So just to recap what we were saying there, say you've got 2 dice in strike, you roll. My highest roll there is a 5. That's a succeed with a cost. So say I'm struggling with one of the factory workers with a tick on them, so I maybe knock them out because that's a success. So maybe I smash them over the head with the butt of my shotgun or whatever, and they fall, but not before they've scratched my face with their nails or whatever and put a physical mark on me. So I'm in pain. I've got blood pouring down my face. Whatever. That is literally it. The cipher system kind of works in a similar way in that players do all the rolling, but it is more traditional in that, so you roll to avoid their attack and you roll to hit them, and then there's actual damage hit point equivalent that comes off depending on how good a roll it was. So there are more detailed, deeper ways to handle it. I think my main gripe is just there's no variability in the dice. 6 dice maximum, but usually as a base you're rolling 1 to 3 dice. The probabilities are all the same. The outcomes are pretty predictable. There's no real way to differentiate between the characters mechanically, which makes them less interesting and gives them less room to grow and become more complex. Pete says, found myself waiting for a random encounter, which happened when the tick was dropped in Daisy's shirt. But without combat, your options are reduced more to reaction and less action. Yeah. They could have got into a fight with the thugs, but they intimidated them off. Yeah, I kind of I was waiting for the opportunity for that as a way to demonstrate how the roles worked, but they found the way around it. So,
and it is worth just adding that you touched on it earlier, that once you start unpicking those rules and trying to put something else in there, the cascade effect gets very big very quickly. What do you do if a player rolls a 6? Well, does that inflict more than one wound or whatever tick you're going to use? You know, it just gets, yeah. And you can't do that on the fly. You just can't.
No. What other system would you prefer for this kind of investigation? Call of Cthulhu or another? How does this compare to Monster of the Week? I haven't played or read Monster of the Week, so I can't comment on Monster of the Week. Call of Cthulhu, or I think the way we played it would better fit Trail of Cthulhu. That's probably what I would have defaulted to. That's set in the 1930s, which is later, but somewhat similar sort of feel to it. Vason is really good. I'm looking forward to playing that at some point. But it's a bit too similar, but a bit more Victorian. But it is a better, more full-featured game. So that would probably be my choice. So these weekend games, I generally take about half a day in the week to prepare for them, or a little snippets of time in the evenings. Despite this being a light system, I spent a hell of a lot more time than usual reading through it and crafting the plot and the story for this one. So I really wanted to be as fair as possible, but I found it really difficult for what it's worth.
So speaking on that real quick, how much did you, just so maybe the audience knows too, did you, so the family, how much did you pull out of the actual book to build the story? Like does that factory exist in their book and you said, okay, I can do something with this factory, and then you started from there, or you know?
So I had the idea that I wanted to make the game about some of the exterior themes about the game and the gaming hobby as a whole, the way in which they'd sanitized it and gotten rid of any negative elements. So I wanted to make it about that, but that's not like in the book. that's me reacting to the book and finding a way to have fun with it. The aspects of the setting that we touched on, they were taken from the book, like the steel as a district that's laid out in the book, but this factory isn't. These monsters aren't in the book. That's something I made up, taking some inspiration from Scarlet Traces, which is a comic book sequel to War of the Worlds, and from Kingdom, which is a comic strip in 2000 AD about insects taking over the earth. So yeah, I drew on lots of different threads, but really all I took from the setting was the names of the locations, the structure of the society, some of the places, and so on. So thank you for the positive words, Paddy. I do try to be fair about everything that I review. I tend to run into fanboys of certain systems who just get very, very angry, no matter how reasonable they're being. So So the monsters specifically say the GM decides if the combat has been going on long enough to call it done. Pretty much, yeah. Not that there's much information on creatures anyway. There's no big bestiary or anything in here. Let me see if I can find the page. Okay, so here are the creature pages, right? That is pretty much it. You get an illustration, but that's not really relevant to anything. There are no statistics. You just get a description and what they do. There's no statistics, no suggestion of how to mechanically incorporate them into the game. Nothing like that. Nothing helpful. So it is arbitrary, and that is stressful for a games master in a game where the mechanics handle that. If a player rolls poorly, if they die, it's not so much on you; it's on the rules, and so that gives you some sort of emotional cover, I guess, which you don't get in this.
Do they at least give like what affects the creature or something? Like, like in this world, like a vampire. I mean, does it say like, okay, Garlet works against them, blah blah blah? I mean, does it at least give you something?
Yeah, occasionally there are a couple of creatures it goes into a bit more depth on associated with the demo scenarios. But if you're going to do that for the demo scenarios, why not provide more of a bestiary with more details in it? So, all right, so this is the Light Eater of Bridleborn or Bridleborn. So it's a giant that feeds on electricity and uses people as conduits for electricity. It describes what it can do in terms of body, brain, and bleed, which is like magical radiation. Suggests some threats and notable figures, but there's still that's better than the rest, but it's still not really much to go on, unfortunately.
I'm going to almost come to the game's defense. Almost. If you see in a storytelling game, let us say, for me as a player, I am perfectly happy to sabotage myself as a character, to make my life more difficult, to make it so that I am badly injured by player narrative fiat.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that, but I am well aware that I am probably in a very small minority when it comes to games, in general. And there is, it's an odd thing for Critical Role. I understand this game has some link to that franchise or whatever it is. It's an odd thing that from what I understand, Critical Role is renowned for long form campaign games. To develop a game which seems to have almost no campaign playability whatsoever. But I will just say that if one played it with a group of masochists, you could make it work purely by narrative. You could, but it's a hard ask,
Yeah, and Critical Role are all performers, so they're kind of used to this form of play. Sorry, go on.
I was just saying that my problem with that is, as a concept, is partly because I come from an acting perspective now, which is now become my background. When I'm playing the character, I want to play a character. I want to keep using my brain power to think as the character, make character decisions, and deal with the consequences. And that can include stupid decisions because the character might be a bit stupid or overconfident or rash, whatever. And that's fine. You play your flaws, of course, as well. But if I'm having to the more my brain I'm having to think about game mechanics, the less I'm actually role playing. The more my brain I'm used to think about, what's a good narrative choice here? Should I deliberately throw this fight because it's a good narrative choice? That's an author brain thinking, not a character brain thinking.
Yeah,
and that's it's antithetical to the idea of immersion in the sense of immersion's overloaded word, immersion into the character.
I should then clarify my statement to say that decision is not pure. It's not a meta decision. It's not a player decision, as it were, or it's not influenced by a player's whims, as it were. It is filtered through character.
Well, in your case, yes, but I think the way the system seems to be designed is if you want your character to lose horribly, you kind of choose it to happen.
Yes, I see. Yes,
it's a player, and that's a player choice, not a character choice.
Yes,
yeah,
I see what you're saying.
As if I were a player, that is my chief complaint about most of these story games, is that I'm not inhabiting the character when I'm playing. I am being authorial, as you say. I'm playing it at that meta level. It's more like being in a writer's room and discussing the story rather than inhabiting the character and doing the story.
At a fundamental level, it's one of these things that arguably not even role-play games at all. They're storytelling games in a very literal sense. They're not. You're not trying to role-play a character.
I think both are valid, but the moment you say that, people's backs get up. It's not a role-playing game.
They're valid, but they're different things. And the irony for me is, if you actually study creative writing and look at the books, it would talk all about characters staying true to the characters, even if you're writing novels. When I did creative writing at university, that's what I got hit with. Hang on, okay. So even the creative writing experts are simulationists, not narrativists. If you actually look at the experts, there's a lot of corpus about how to write a novel. There's a lot of experts have thought about this. So that's one problem. But with narrative, is inherently flawed also, because you go, so what narrative principles did you apply to decide that was a good story? What narrative structure theory are you following? And apparently most of them don't have one.
All right. Moving on. Do you think you need another session? Do you think your opinion is settled? I was willing to revise my opinion based on actual play, but my opinion has not changed. It is calcified. I might bust it out occasionally for a one shot, but it needs some fixing. Fortunately, as a game designer, I enjoy fixing things. I think bringing in some of the more robust rules, Blades in the Dark, might fix it enough for me.
My issue is, you could run this setting and bring in a completely different rule system to run it in. Fine. But is the setting good enough to justify doing that?
I don't much like the setting. I think I would have to turn the sort of class conflict side of it up to 11 to make it engaging, and then it might feel too political to people. I don't know.
Actually, on the topic of class conflict, I was also struggling a bit though. Have we had a Marx in this world? Can we talk about class struggle? And workers' oppression, because is that a thing? I can't aware that's a thing. We don't know this because the setting's not sufficiently defined like that.
Paddy says, funny thing is, if a character dies in Candela Obscura, it seems like it would be 100% because the GM calls for it. It can't be the fault of the player. The rules don't allow for that. Yes, and that sucks. I don't kill a lot of characters anyway. I tend to be quite forgiving with people, but it does happen. And I personally don't like to carry the can for making the decision. It should be something that emerges from play. Bad decisions get you killed. Pete says, you gave this game a fair chance for all of us to experience, and that strengthens our understanding of it in gameplay. Couldn't ask for more. I see why you took the challenge. Thanks. So just to finish up quickly, we did play that other story game the other week. The animal anime one with the Hengeyoke.
Stars? No. Story? No.
I can't remember what it's called now.
I finally got to be an animal because you never let me have a pet.
Yeah. But I think I enjoyed that more, and that was more outside of our typical wheelhouse than this is. The fact that you're basically playing children made it easier to kind of navigate around what characters could and couldn't do, and what was and wasn't appropriate. Golden Sky Stories?
That's it, yeah.
Was that right? Yes, Golden Sky Stories, heartwarming roleplay. That's what it was called. Yeah. All right. It's after midnight, so it's bedtime. And when Bagpuss goes to sleep, all of the other creatures go to sleep as well. All right. See you later. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all that jazz, and tune in to Postmortem Video, our main channel, during the week. Night all.
All right. Thanks, Grim. Thank you, gentlemen. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.